All right, we are live. Welcome all to this very special David Rams live stream where we're going to be joined by Paul and Asal from Anonymous For The Voiceless to discuss a load of different rumors, accusations. I laugh because some of them are pretty funny, but no, some of them are very serious. Rumors, accusations, and a whole load of questions that you've been sending to me that you want to ask Paul and Asal, the co-founders of Anonymous For The Voiceless. We're going to go through all of these things, but first of all, I just want to do a bit of housekeeping with you. So if you are watching this later, as in you're not watching it live, if you check across the bottom, the progress bar, you will see it's been split up into sections. So if you want to find the specific question, rumor, accusation, or whatever that you're looking for, you can find it right there. If you have questions yourself right now, and you are watching this live right now, and you have questions, we're going to do a Q&A at the end. So save them for that. But if you have a topic or a question that you really, really want to be asked right now or sooner, you can use the super chat. If you use the super chat, I will pause and we'll answer your question right away. But there is a caveat, there is a disclaimer here. If you are spamming, trolling, or abusing anyone in any way, including if you send a super chat and you pay for a super chat and it's a spam or abuse, it won't be discussed. So you'll be wasting your money. I just want to make that very clear for you. And that also goes for the live chat and it goes for the Q&A at the end. We won't be tolerating any spam or any trolling or any abuse. So the moderator will be handling that. I hope it doesn't come to that, but I know a lot of the topics that we're going to discuss are a little bit controversial. So I expect that there will be at least one or two. So all that being said, yeah, just keep it sensible, keep it polite, and we'll have a productive live stream. That's pretty much it. So with that being said, let's bring in Paul and Asal. Welcome, Paul. Welcome, Asal.
Hey.
What's up?
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
All good. All good. All good. Excited to get through this, and I think a lot of people in the comments have been pretty pumped as well to get through this. I know for you two, this may seem like you're repeating yourself a lot of these things, because over the years, I think we've been through this a few times, or your own channels and in your own social medias. But there are a few people, at least a few people here, that have been asking a few of the questions already, and a lot of people have been sending me questions. So I'm happy we can do this, and hopefully once and for all get everything discussed in one place. So I really appreciate you coming on and doing this. I know it's not the easiest thing to do. So we can kick off, I suppose. Let's just kick straight in, right? I mean, let's not waste any time. We were here for a reason. Let's kick off with the most recent stuff that's been going on right now. I think most people watching are going to be here probably off the back of that. I don't think we need to really introduce what AV is and who you are. I think anybody watching this is going to know that already. So let's just jump in with the recent stuff and what's been going on with AV, with the whole situation with Joey, the situation with Animal Safe Movement, Anita, the donor. Where are we up to with this now? Could you give us an update on that just to kick things off?
So we reached out to the donor to find out if this was a genuine thing, to legitimately continue donating to AV. And they replied with more demands on top of everything that was discussed in the videos we put out and everything that Joey had mentioned. So even more demands on top of that that we had to respond to. But we, of course, ourselves had things that we needed to communicate to the donor. I mean, there's obviously a break in trust at this point, and we need to have a conversation and reestablish that trust and things like this. And we haven't heard back since we've replied. So that was over almost a month ago now. And we haven't heard back.
What were the extra requirements they were giving you? Like, what did they add?
One of them was for us to delete these videos that we put up about Joey, and that to me was pretty telling of what this was really about.
Right. And what did they give her, like, any kind of justification for wanting that done, or was it just we request that you do this?
Well, it seemed like it was out of the concern for Joey's image or his
Reputation.
yeah.
So far, to get it straight, the requirements. So the requirements for the donor to continue funding AV are that you delete those videos, give them some, I don't know, financial organization access to all of your records. Is the board of directors thing still going? They still want you to do that as well? Is that still on the cards, or did they pull that?
Well, here's the thing, there were things mentioned in the email that we got from the donor, but we don't even know what exactly are the expectations on their side. And so that's why we wanted to have a conversation with them. But at this point, we're not getting that.
Do you think it's possible that they did that to save face? As in that Joey was involved and gave that response to try to kind of, save face, basically. Do you think that's fair to say? Or do you think that he actually, or she, I don't know, the donor, do you think they actually want to rectify things? Or is it just to try to repair some of the damage to the reputation of Joey and the donor?
I mean, even in my most charitable of moods towards this, I can't see it any other way.
Yeah, it feels like that. I mean, from an outside perspective, unfortunately, it does feel like it was just an attempt to maybe, I don't know, get the upper hand, take the high road, or appear to be taking the high road. But it's really sad to hear that actually it's you actually took the decision to take the high road with them, and then they just didn't respond, which, it's disappointing.
Yeah, well, when we heard that there was this interest to continue funding us and have another conversation, then we're like, great, let's have a conversation. But then, we're not going to be bought and bossed around, and that's not what we designed AV for. It's in fact the opposite of that. And that's part of the reason why we're at this point that we're at, and the reason why we have an organic following. And I think there's just a misunderstanding of what we do from the donor's perspective, and I think that they don't really understand our work, and they don't really understand us and what our mission is, and they perhaps got involved without doing their homework. And we wanted to have a conversation so that we could get on the same page about things, and we're not able to do that at this point. So that's where everything is left at this point.
Yeah, I understand. And it's something that it's not a surprise that the donor or anyone basically is having some kind of let's say strong opinion towards being like kind of anti-AV. This seems to be quite a common thing right now. And I was just thinking about it earlier about what kind of an example could I give that, to like, I don't know, an analogy to give. And it's kind of funny. I don't know if you'll agree with me, but I feel like AV has become kind of like the Nickelback of animal rights. It's like Nickelback I'm sorry, but Nickelback are extremely successful, right? They've won so many awards.
And this stream started.
Nickelback has won loads of awards. They play loads of gigs. They're really successful. They got loads of fans, but it's also very in to hate them. It's almost like a trend to hate them, right? And that's what I'm kind of getting at here, is that it's not a surprise to me that someone is holding really negative opinions without even considering what you're doing, because that's the in thing to do. That's the kind of point I was making. It seems cool. Like when I put out some messages asking people, hey, give me some questions for AV. I had a few people just replying, just with some, real virtue signaling stuff, like just really like just explaining why they won't go for AV anymore. And I'm like, that's great, but like, give me a question, like give me something, it just seems like it's cool to say, I don't work with AV. It seems cool to be like that. Like, it's cool to say I hate Nickelback. I'm sorry to put you in that bracket, but it really feels like that, I've got to say. And that brings me on to go on, sorry.
AV is a lot cooler though.
Yeah.
I mean, come on,
Yeah.
Chad Kroger's not that much of a loser, is he? Come on.
No,
I used to listen to them when I was younger, I have to admit.
I know it seems like it's a bandwagon for us to disagree with you on using that comparison, but but it's that's just a taste in music, which it's a taste in activism. I guess that's the comparison you're making.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah, kind of.
But I think with Nickelback, well, anyway, I don't want to get into the comparison.
Yeah, maybe it's for the best. Maybe it's for the best, yeah. But I'm going to give an example, actually, because I did have a plan set out for this stream, but you know what? I feel like this is relevant right now. So I want to tell the viewers a quick story here about something that happened. I put these messages out, didn't I? Put these posts out on my Instagram, asking people, give me some questions, give me some topics. I put it on Facebook. And by the way, one of those posts has blown up with a load of nonsense. But anyway, that's another topic. Some people responded to me saying, you know, certain things. And I want to just bring up one of these responses that I had from somebody on my Instagram who had a story to tell. And I want to just kind of link it in with what we just said about it's cool to hate AV. It's cool to kind of just, you know, find something wrong and just almost even sometimes bullshit as well. So I'm going to show you something that happened. And this is real, by the way. This is not designed. This wasn't planned. This is something that genuinely happened. And I've got the evidence because I can show you my, I can show you the literal inbox from my Instagram, and you'll see why this is relevant in a moment. So I'm going to share the screen so you can see it. All right. So here's my stories, right? I don't know if you can you see that right now? No. How do I change this? Hold up. I need to add the different screen. I've never added like this kind of screen. I'm trying to get the preview screen up. Okay, well, second. All right, open up. Where are we? All right, here we go. So here's a story that I put my story out, didn't I, saying, like, tell me any topics you think should be discussed. Somebody responded saying this: why do you treat your organizers like disposable garbage, right? Now, like, on the surface, you're thinking, wow, okay, that's pretty intense, right? What's going on here? So I responded to this person. Oh, do I have to switch this every time? Yeah, I do. So I responded to this person very simply saying, basically, I responded saying, okay, give me some information. I need to ask this question properly. So this is the response I got. When the allegations of fraud came up, I commented on one of Paul's comments stating something along the lines of it being standard practice to ask for financial information. Paul was very aggressive in his responses, even abusive. I told him I was one of the organizers, and he told me to fuck off and leave, so I stood down. These are not isolated incidents, unfortunately. His temper gets in the way, and he burns his people, his own people. Good luck. So I'm not saying that I don't believe that person. And at the time I said, you know, okay, I believe you, but I need some evidence, right? I need something to show here. Do you have a screenshot? Do you have something to show me that I can show to them? And, you know, I'm happy to discuss it. And this is the answer that I got. I don't. He cleans up his message straight away. I know you believe me, but understand you need for proof. You could perhaps pose the question more broadly, as this is behavior as a pattern of his, and so will be hard to deny. Sorry, I can't help you any further, David. So it's pretty damning, right? This is pretty damning. And at the time, I got to admit that I was a little bit like swayed because, look, I know Paul, and I know you both, Paul and Asal, and I know that sometimes, you know, I lose my shit too. I say things that I later come to regret. I've told people to fuck off. I told someone to fuck off live in a live stream by accident. I thought they were saying something that they weren't. I told them to fuck off, and then they were like, why? What's wrong? I only said this. I got completely mixed up. So it's not like, you know, we're infallible. We make mistakes. But anyway, I brought this up with you guys, right? And luckily, Paul actually had the screenshots of this interaction. Now I'm going to show you what the actual interaction was. Actually, hold up. I've just realized there's one little thing I need to blur out. But you're not going to believe what the actual interaction went like. On the surface of this, it obviously looks like it's a done deal, right? And I'm going to explain why this is relevant after I've shown you. If you're wondering, watching this, if you're wondering how is this relevant, you'll see in a moment.
And I'd just like to add that this is how people commonly talk about AV when they say negative things about us. Yeah,
definitely. This is why I'm bringing it up. It is absolutely like this, and I want to get into this as a topic as well. It's not just a thing. But hey, look. So here we go. This is the actual interaction. So this is the individual. Saying the information requested is pretty standard for an audit. So this is correct. This is what she said. No lies there, okay? That's in line with the message I received. So here's Paul being extremely aggressive, apparently. I don't and I request bank login details to be handed over to a non-accountant and a former gang member. How is that stuck? That's how a stock standard audit is carried out, is it? So that's the aggressive response, apparently. This person responds saying, you know, she's upset because it's calling Joey a former gang member, and saying that screenshots could be manipulated. And then Paul goes to justify himself, saying, well, Joey calls himself an ex-gang member. Okay, so nothing really going on there. No fuck off, nothing like that so far. And it goes on. You're thinking, okay, so where is the fuck off coming? Where's the fuck off and leave part coming, right? Because that's the main part here that sounds horrible, the aggressive fuck off and leave. All we've got here is Paul saying, get out of here. You say, get out of here. So that's not fuck off and leave. And then this person who was an organizer gets out of there. She decides to leave. And that's it. That's literally it. That's the whole interaction.
Yeah.
Can I just pause you there?
Yeah, go ahead.
So at this point, I didn't even know that she was an organizer. That's why she says in the next comment, oh no, Paul, bless you. I am one of your organizers. So she's now informing me of this.
After you said, get out of here.
Yeah, so after the fact. But yeah, just wanted to.
And that's, it's okay, yeah. And that's exactly, it's even, this is my point, basically. When I was talking about the whole Nickelback thing and how these rumors get spread and it's cool to hate AV, it's because of things like this. And don't get me wrong, I know there are examples out there of me being an asshole to people, and I'm sure there are examples out there of you guys being an asshole to people. But to go and actually take something that didn't happen and get it into your head that it happened a certain way where, you know, you were told to fuck off and leave as an organizer. And you know, people believe this, and this goes and goes and goes. And I guess my question for you is, like, how does this happen? How do we get to the point now where we have people that believe that they have been wronged by you? They believe it so much that they go and tell other people they were wronged by you, that they were told to fuck off, when there is literal evidence that you have, obviously, and it's online, to show that this is not how it went. Why does it happen? And why do people believe it instantly without even checking or questioning it? Like, how did we get to this point, in your opinion?
It's for the same reason that you get hate when people choose to run hate campaigns, small or large, against you, and their baseless claims. It's the same reason that anyone of any amount of influence in this day and age, in this age of outrage, you know, in this cancel culture, this is the way that it works, right? People don't have standards for information anymore. Then they don't hear something and then screen it. They hear something and they say, well, he said it with conviction, or she said it with conviction, or they said it with conviction, and therefore it must be true. And if they said it in the comment section of a post with emotion, it's true. You don't need to do any more homework than that. So I guess that question is a bit more deeper. It's more of a question about why humans are the way humans are.
Yeah, and yeah, I can see. So you think you're putting it down to the popularity aspect of it, in that, like, the more well known an individual or a group is, the more of this that's going to come. Is that am I right in understanding this is kind of the point?
Yeah, and you know, a lot of our organizers have had challenges in dealing with hate that they get when they come on to become an organizer and represent AV in their cities, because they're seen as like working for Hitler, you know?
Right.
And
yeah,
you know, we tell organizers, one of the things you learn about being an animal rights activist when you work with us is dealing with that shit.
Right.
And that's part of it if you want to do something of influence within this world and make an impact.
Okay. I agree. So I think that's going to be a recurring topic, to be honest with you. So let's go on to the like let's go into a solid topic, something we can really like get into and kind of debunk. So one of the more common things that came up with my topics that came up was about money. Now, we talked about the donor, obviously, but we didn't talk about the general things that people seem to be obsessing over when it comes to AV. So these general money concerns, as I've called them, like general money concerns, they include things like people are upset because you guys didn't want to release financial records. They're upset because apparently that they don't know, or you have not released where donations go. They're upset because the chapters are claiming they receive no money. So I know you've dealt with some of this on your own channel and on your own videos, and I guess you're sick of talking about it. But again, my aim today is to get into it and to ask maybe more questions that maybe you guys maybe haven't had before, and to get really some solid facts and detail out here so that people can't continue to discuss this randomly. Like you said, I feel like we need to vet these things rather than just taking people's words. So what is that situation then? So let's be more specific with the question. There's money coming in, and obviously there's money going out. People are claiming that there's a problem that they don't know what's coming in and where it's going. So how would you respond to that? Like, what do you think? How can you reassure these people that it's going where it should be, or you know, what the situation is, what the financial situation is?
I think going back to what you were saying before about like how it's the cool thing now to hate on AV, it's also the cool thing to just ask these questions because you don't see other organizations or other activists being asked the same questions. And the people that are asking these questions and making the same claims don't have any kind of evidence to back up their claim. So it's just because somebody brought it up in the comment section and they saw it, they're just going to repeat it. And then the next person is going to say the same thing. So like the fact that we have never done any financial reports is actually bullshit, because it's not that we're not willing to do it, it's that we haven't been required to do it yet. And if anyone is actually interested, all of this information is public, so they can just go and look it up and they will have access to it, and they can see that we're required to do our first financial, what is it called, like reporting this year, end of the year, or it's probably going to be delayed to next year actually because of COVID. But because we registered AV as a non-for-profit, I think it was in 2018, the way it works here, you're not asked to do a reporting for like the first year or the first couple of years. So it's not that because otherwise we wouldn't be able to run AV if we hadn't done our legal requirements, whatever it is that, you know, the government is asking you to do as a non-for-profit. It's not like you can just say, no, I'm not going to do my reporting, and then you can continue run AV as a non-for-profit. So yeah, like I said, these claims are just baseless. There's no evidence. And also people have no reason to think that the money is not going where we say it's going. If somebody has proof that the money is going elsewhere, then they need to come forward and show us where the money is going. We have explained this, like you said, multiple times. We have told people where the money is going, like with all these different categories. So we can just repeat that. But I feel like these people are committed to think a certain way, and no matter what you say, they're just not going to believe you. So yeah, I just don't know if there's anything else that we can say to clarify this for people.
Yeah, I guess for the sake of this stream, I'm not interested in going through literally, like, and I wouldn't expect you to do this, to go through like, okay, we spend this much here and this much here. I don't want to do that. That's just, it's not, you don't owe that to people watching this. I think what I'm more interested in is like, maybe you could just list off like the things that, I don't know, the biggest spending from AV and like where it goes, to give people an idea, because maybe some people genuinely have no idea where an organization like AV would spend money. Let's assume they're asking it out of, you know, interest rather than out of accusation. Like if somebody asked you, hey, I'm just curious, like where would it go? Like where do you spend the most money? Like how would you answer that question? Like just to appease them, let's say, or just to, you know,
so
show
the last
someone who's interested.
years, when we had the major donations coming in. So the biggest part of it would obviously be the payments to the team members, so including myself, Paul, and at some point we had just over 30 people working with AV. So you can imagine how much that would cost roughly. And then now we've got, I think, I don't know actually how many people, we've got like around 20 people working with us, including us too. So the bulk of it is going towards payments so that those people can continue to work for AV. And then the second biggest thing has always been the AV fund, which is something that we started, and we would dedicate a certain amount of money to go towards chapters that were, active chapters that needed some help getting their equipment. So that was always like the second biggest expense for us. And then, the rest of it is just, if people look into what costs are involved in terms of, all the admin stuff, all the programs that you need, the softwares, the subscriptions, and then all the big campaigns that we were doing as well. So.
Okay. And with the staff, they were 30, were they all full-time, 30 staff?
No, we had, so we have people that work with us as contractors. So AV doesn't have like staff necessarily, but everyone's like an independent contractor that comes in and they can do part-time or full-time. And I think I would say maybe it's half of the people that work with us are full-time, half are part-time, or just come in as volunteers even sometimes, and they do some work casually. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, because I'm just trying to like put a number on it, I think, for anyone who maybe is not following. So like 30 staff, if you had 30 staff that were only working, let's say like not full-time hours, so they're working part-time hours, right? So let's imagine it's 30 staff working 20 hours a week. So we'll go low, right? We'll pitch low here. 30 staff working 20 hours a week. And let's imagine that I'm going to work in yearly salaries here, like base yearly salary in euros, for example. The absolute minimum you could earn a year to survive in a place like, I don't know, let's pick a cheap, let's baseline everything low. Let's go low on everything. The minimum you could earn in a year in somewhere like Spain, for example, would be like, because that's where I know, it's like 16,000 euros a year. It's the absolute minimum. And that's really pushing it. Like, it's really difficult. And that would be a full-time salary. So let's half that, 8,000 a year. And let's imagine that's 30 staff. So that's 240,000 euros a year. That's pitching low. That's if you have no full-time staff. That's if all of your staff are only working like half-time hours, let's imagine, right? So just to put that into perspective for anyone who's wondering how much that would be, so like it could be anywhere upwards from 240,000 euros a year, which would be like, I don't know, 300,000 US dollars, maybe something like that. So that is a huge chunk, yeah. And I think when I first watched the video and I heard that and I worked it out myself at that time, and I was like, yeah, that's actually a chunk of money that I don't think many people understand, right? It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you actually calculate it, it is quite a lot. So. The next thing, then, you talked about the AV fund for the chapters. Where has it come from then? That there's this, apparently this is a rumor. Okay, I don't have evidence of this, and I'm sure there isn't evidence of this. Maybe there's one or two organizers who have caused this problem. But where is it coming from that the chapters are not getting the funding? Where has that started? Do you know where that came from, or do you know what is actually behind it? Like, are they getting the funding? I'm sorry to ask the question, but it came up a lot again.
No, I think it's the same thing as everything else. Like, somebody just started this rumor that AV keeps the money, or specifically Paul and Asal keep the money to themselves, and they don't send any money to the chapters. I think it's just, again, we don't even know where this came from, but if people were really interested, this is one thing that can be easily tracked. We have a full list of everyone who ever received a fund, how much they received it, what they spent it on. And because everyone who receives the fund, they were supposed to send us the invoices. So it's like, we have all the records. And I guess the only thing is that we weren't doing it in a way that just as soon as you become an organizer, you can receive $2,000 or something. It was, there were certain criteria that you need to meet as an organizer or as a chapter. You need to be active. You need to be doing a minimum number of cubes, and you need to be, you know, operating for a certain amount of time. And then even with that, because the money was limited, we had to pick chapters. So sometimes it was just, you know, picking this chapter over the other chapter, and then next month they would have a higher chance of getting it. But yeah, there will be many organizers that would actually be able to come forward and say, yeah, we received it and this is what we spent it on.
But I mean, our conditions for, or our criteria for being accepted in getting the funding was nothing crazy. Like, you had to be on board for 6 months, you know, just 6 months.
And do 1 cube a month. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, 1 cube a month. So you had to do a total amount of 6 cubes before we would look at giving you money.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
you know, that's nothing too strenuous. I think what's happened is a lot of organizers don't really pay attention to what we do. They come on and they just do their own thing in their own cities, and they want to be a king or a queen in their own, on their own mountains. And literally, we've seen so many people come and go who carry this attitude within AB. They just do their own thing in their own city, and they aren't a part of what we're doing as a global movement. And these people don't really pay attention to the things that we have going on.
Yeah.
And they don't really know about these things to any detail, so they don't apply, and then they complain that they never got the money.
right.
Yeah.
How do you think we can handle that? I mean, this is not even an AV specific thing, but we can talk about it for a second. That it's something I've also experienced, not only in AV but in SAVE, and also in even, you know, grassroots, like local grassroots organizations, local grassroots groups, is that there seems to always be some kind of power struggle going on in these groups. And I don't know if it's only within animal rights, or if it's also within, I don't know, women's rights, if it's in Black Lives Matter. I don't know if it's in all these groups. I've not been in those groups for enough time to know. But in animal rights, it seems to be that in every single group, there is a power struggle of somebody trying to take over and somebody else who's trying to take over that person. And, you know, somebody who's trying to reject the leader they have, or whatever you want to call them, leader, whatever it is. It seems to be very common. Like, what do you think? What's causing that? And would you have a suggestion on how to fix that?
Well, you know, one of the things I'm really proud of with AV is that we really took into account like how we're taken by the public, and the fact that we want to be taken seriously, and like we want to address that within the public eye. And we don't necessarily expect people to trust our leadership, to like trust our decision making. But I think it's safe to say we've earned a certain level of trust, because, you know, we stick to our shit pretty well, and we do what we do pretty well. And those who choose to trust our leadership aren't forced to choose that. They choose it on their own accord. And I guess if you want that entitlement that Asal and I have earned to run an organization the way that we choose, then you should start your own organization.
Sure.
If you come on board with someone else, you know, you choose to volunteer, or you choose to work for an organization, and you're onboarding their ethos and representing what their movement is about, you really have no right to say you shouldn't make the decisions.
Sure. So the idea is kind of, do you think that maybe should be some kind of, I don't know, let's say a self-reflection with people who join groups, or who start to work with not just AV but with any group really, that if you are going to volunteer with a group, I guess you need to learn that maybe your ideas won't always be accepted by the current, I don't know, manager, leader, organizer of that group. And if you don't like it, then that's absolutely fine. You either continue volunteering or you create your own thing and do it your way. Is that what you're saying, basically?
Yeah, because like, of course, we always welcome feedback, but welcoming feedback doesn't mean we're going to take it on board. We're going to discuss it between us two and then the team that we have,
right.
And then we might take it on board or we may not. But to expect that every single feedback is just going to be accepted and we're going to implement that idea, whatever it might be, I think that's very unrealistic. And yeah, it will be very chaotic. So yes, if somebody doesn't like the fact that, you know, their feedback wasn't accepted, then I think if they feel like they're not aligned with the organization, then they should just do their own thing. I mean, that just makes sense to me. It's just very common sense.
Yeah, and you know, I think you clarified, but just to make sure that no one is confused by what we're saying here, we're not saying, you know, if you have any input, you know, you have any feedback, you have any criticism as a representative of AV, whether you're an organizer, volunteer, whatever, that we're not saying that we're just going to say fuck you and go do your own thing. That's not how we operate. And like to think that we've only ever enacted ideas that have come from either my brain or Asal's brain is insane. We've always taken on feedback from others and taken it into account. And I think the last thing I want people to consider here is, where would AV be today? Like, really think about where AV would be today if we weren't operating the way that we are. If we ran a system where we had like a board of, board of directors, where we only had a vote into what was, and we only had 2 votes of many into what was being decided on. I mean, I think it's clear that AV wouldn't be clear about the message, and I don't think that we would be where we are today.
That leads on to another point quite nicely, actually, because I think what I feel like you're hinting at here is that if you didn't maintain control, you feel that AV would go down the same road as pretty much every other AR organization has gone down, where they are bringing in human issues and human rights issues, and basically kind of, I guess if you could put it in a way that they're moving with the times rather than staying true to what they started for, if that makes sense. And some people would say that that is a positive thing, you know, to move with the times, because let's be honest, the times are very much changing, and you know, a lot of human rights issues have very much been thrown to the front, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But you could argue that AR organizations also taking those fights on board, and I guess you would argue that is a bad thing. And that brings me to another question that has been asked, or let's say a topic that has been brought up, the topic of anti-intersectionality, and you know what this means with AV, not intersectionality. I don't think that's even the correct thing to say, because intersectionality itself, I'm sure we all, if there's anybody in this chat, or even you guys, that disagrees with the concept of it, I would just say you're disagreeing with facts, right? If the fact is that intersectionality, as it was originally coined, it's factual. It's like, you know, someone who's female and black will experience the world differently to someone who's male and white, or someone who's female and white, or someone who's, you know, transgender and black, or transgender and white. Everyone experiences the world differently and has different challenges, right? That's what it means. That's literally what it means. Not what vegans have made it. That's bullshit. So we all agree that that's what it means, I'm sure, and I guess no one really would argue against that. It's just logic. It's just factual. But let's say they call themselves consistent anti-oppression crowd. Let's say, and this is something that you have like more than once you've stood up against, and you've said some things about, you know, the animals first approach, non-humans first approach. And this has been widely criticized, and a lot of people have even, you know, people have made videos about this. They are constantly attacking you guys for this. People saying they won't go to AV events because of this. So yeah, this is the topic we're going to get into. I'll ask you a question. Someone just asked this question earlier. Why do intersectionals not like you? That's what someone said. So that's an easy question to start with. Why do these people hate you? Why are they coming for you? Why are they trying to cancel you? Why are they trying to ruin your organization?
You want to go or me?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, like you already explained that it's not that we're anti-intersectional. We just made a decision that AV is going to be 100% dedicated to the animals, non-human animals. And there are many reasons why we decided on that, but that doesn't mean that we don't think, or anyone within the organization, not just us two, doesn't believe that other groups of beings need voices to speak up for them, or we shouldn't be doing activism in different areas. So it's just the way that people decide to interpret this. Like, someone decided that because AV is 100% dedicated to non-human animals, that means that we have hatred towards humans, or there's discrimination when it comes to certain groups of humans, and they're just running with that idea.
I think it's easy to paint that image of us, given that we are aware of the fact that we dedicate AV 100% to animal rights, in light of the temperament currently in society is that anyone who does such a thing must also pander to human rights. Otherwise, it's totally out of place. So we're completely aware of this, and we still won't pander. So it's easy to paint us like that, but we don't care, because we want for this to exist in the world. We want a movement who is still willing to just do the right thing in the face of what is popular in the moment.
And you've been also a popular thing that comes up when discussing these things is the idea of a hierarchy of oppression, of which it appears that you guys do have a hierarchy, as in I've heard, at least you, Paul, especially, I've heard this, but I don't know if Sal, I'm sure you've said it as well. And this is not an attack; it's just, just quoting that the animals are by far the most oppressed beings on the planet, right? And some people get upset about that because they say then you're creating a hierarchy of oppression, and apparently this is wrong. How do you respond to that?
That's disrespectful, and it's a spit in the face of every animal that is subjected to that injustice. You can act like you're offended by these semantics all you want, but just remember that while your charade is going on, you're spitting in the face of the victims who are involved in the injustice that you're carrying on about. And that's my response to that. It's just simple that we shouldn't have to explain that we're not saying that humans aren't oppressed. Duh. So,
do you believe?
At this point, I'm getting so over it. Like,
can I just add? Yeah, like what you said doesn't sound like something that resonates with me, the hierarchy of oppression. But it is a fact that the animals. Well, okay, so in terms of the number of individual animals who have been tortured and abused and murdered compared to any other injustice, that's literally what we're talking about. So I don't think it means, like, if anyone takes that as, so you're saying there is a hierarchy of oppression, meaning this group is more oppressed or we should speak up for them first, that's not what we're saying. You can't take that from saying, animals are the most oppressed, meaning they have been oppressed for the longest, and the number of individual victims is higher than any other injustice. That's just the fact. That's the reality of it. And you're right. If somebody gets upset because of that, then I think they need to just reflect on why that is, because I know that there are people out there that were more oppressed than me as a woman of color, And so therefore anyone else in any other group, then they should know that there are other beings, that are more oppressed than themselves, and that doesn't take away from their pain or their suffering. That's how I see it.
I mean, how more audacious could you possibly be as a human being, any human being, to say you're more oppressed than a group of beings enslaved, tortured, and murdered by the trillion with a T every year? When was the last genocide of 1 billion with a B humans? Oh wait, crickets. 1 billion, I'm talking. 3 trillion with a T are subjected to this injustice every single year. It's happening every second of every day. It doesn't need to be explained to vegans, of course. Mm-hmm. But hello, don't get mad at us for being a medium of truth.
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I think this is a point that I agree on. I mean, I guess I'm not supposed to be sharing my personal views here. I am interviewing you, but I have to say I agree with you, because I don't believe that it's down to emotions at this point. I believe it's down to the facts. It's objectively true. It's not something that can even be argued against. And anyone who's tried to argue against it, even with me, the arguments, it just falls to pieces, because you can't possibly claim that any other animal on the planet is abused, or any human animal on the planet is abused or exploited or objectified more than a non-human. The non-humans don't even have political rights or voices. Like it's not even about how much, like say, even if we forget how many of them are abused and the severity, the fact that they literally have no say at all in their own lives, like none whatsoever, almost no legal rights, it's enough. It's enough to just even go from that. Even if it wasn't 3 trillion, that alone is enough of a point, but at that, and the fact there's 3 trillion of them being, horrifically murdered, it's a crazy point to try to argue against that, in my opinion. And I'm always surprised when vegans try to argue against it. I mean, nothing really surprises me anymore, actually. but yeah, it's slightly more surprised with that. I've got a question. Do you think this came from a Instagrammer, I think? Do you think it's speciesist to ignore human oppression while fighting for non-human animals? That was a question that somebody wanted to ask you guys.
I know that people aren't attuned to nuance and context, but it is required for us to answer this question.
As a general statement, the way you asked it, of course not. Sorry. The question was, is it speciesist to ignore that?
Do you think it is personally? Do you find it to be? Is that an example of speciesism, basically?
Yeah. So when I hear that question as a blanket statement like that, yes, because it sounds like otherwise
then people are going to say, well,
sorry, let me finish.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're denying that group of beings, like their existence and their suffering and their oppression.
Right.
So yeah, of course it is, but yeah, like we need an example or an explanation of why. Because is that because AV is 100% focused on non-human animals, or is this question directed at us personally and people are wondering if we do other forms of activism or we care about other forms of injustice?
Every day we make posts on social media about non-human animals. Every day we set up a Cube of Truth action on the streets. Those energies are spent on fighting for non-human animals while human injustices are occurring within human to human injustices are occurring around the world at that time. So if at a general level you want to say, because of our answer, we're technically ignoring all of these other injustices while we're doing that, well, there's no point of even trying to, there's no nuance at all in the way that someone would think if that's the conclusion they're drawing.
Yeah, I think I would add to that in that I don't think it's speciesism, because you're not fighting for humans, or I'm not fighting for humans because I think humans are somehow inferior. I'm choosing to fight for non-humans because I believe that, well, not I believe, they are in more need. Simple as that. So that's how I answer that question is that way. It's not speciesism, because I'm not doing it because of the species. I'm doing it because of the severity of the situation.
We've never even said the term animals first, humans second. Like, that's come from other people. We've never said that before.
Right.
All we've ever said is animals deserve to have a cause dedicated solely to them. And so AV will be that.
Sure. I actually don't know if I've ever heard you say that. I don't think I have. And some people have messaged that. So if anyone's watching right now and you feel like you have some evidence of that, then you're more than welcome to send it and we'll discuss it. And but it's something that does keep coming up, and that goes for other things, by the way. If you're watching now and we go through something and we discuss how Paul and Asal have never said that, or this has not happened, and you think it has, you just send me a message with what you think has happened, or with evidence of it, and we'll talk about it right now. We're not here to hide away from things. And Paul and Asal, you agreed to come on here to actually directly face some of these things. So if anyone does have something that they feel should be directly faced, just send it me on Instagram or Messenger or email, or tag me in the comments and tell me you're going to send it on Messenger or whatever, and I'll pick it up and we'll bring it up on the screen and we'll talk about it. Like, we're not hiding anything. But I've got a sneaky suspicion that that's not going to happen, because most of the stuff we're talking about is just rumor, and I don't think there's a lot of evidence behind it, to be honest. But let's I think we're still on intersectionality, and I feel like we maybe want to delve into that just a little bit further. I guess your guys' stance on it. I mean, somebody asked the question here saying, what are you doing to make your activism intersectional? Somebody asked that of you guys. And I was thinking, like, how can I really ask that? Because I don't know if it's something that you actually are trying to do. I know that there was I know there was a change of direction recently as to, not be so, I don't know what the word is, to be more sensitive, I think, were your own words, because maybe in the past there was a little bit of insensitivity. But I guess, what would you say to someone who's asking you that? What are you doing to make your activism more intersectional?
We're not trying to do that. Like you said, that's not the goal.
There's no need for us to try to do that. And let's just cut the shit here. People who say this are not actually asking us to adopt anti-oppression values within our organization, because we already have those. What they're asking us to do is become activists for human-related issues, and we are dedicated to non-human animals. Sorry, not sorry.
So you draw a line, I guess, between not contributing to other oppressions, or they're drawing a line, sorry, between not contributing to other oppressions and being active for other oppressions. And they feel that because you are on the not contributing side of the line, that therefore means that you are wrong and that you should be actually active for those oppressions too.
Correct. They want us to be on the streets showing footage of what's happening in the BLM movement, or with regards to homelessness or feminism, or I guess whatever the mainstream issue is of the times.
But going back to what you were saying earlier about like the definition of intersectionality, it actually doesn't apply here, because sure, you can be an animal rights activist, you can also be a human rights activist in whatever area you want to work in, but what's the relationship between like any of those things that you mentioned and animals suffering? You know what I mean? There is no relationship. So I don't think it actually makes sense to ask that of us. So how are we gonna make it work with that, even if that was something we were looking at doing? How are you gonna connect homelessness to animal suffering in the meat, dairy, and egg industry?
I mean, we get asked to speak up about various issues, and it is really only about what is popular at that time, what is being spoken about at that time. And it's not about these issues that cause a vast number of deaths around the world, for example, in the Middle East, that never get spoken about, that we're aware of because we have heritage in the Middle East. We know about these things these people, for example, who were outraged about what was going on in America during the protests in Minnesota and throughout other states, said really nothing about what happened in Lebanon, for example.
Yeah, they are very selective with
Yeah.
the causes that they choose to speak up about. And that's the thing, because when people ask us to do the same thing, they're asking us to speak up for those specific issues. Because you know how many different things are out there that you could be speaking about when it comes to human rights. There's so many different things. And I don't know anyone who claims to be an intersectional and they actually cover all of those issues. There's literally thousands of different things that you could talk about, and I only see these people focusing on 2 or 3 different categories, and they want us to do the same.
And that points out that you do have to choose your cause.
Yeah.
Because if they're claiming you have to speak up for all of them, well, there's literally thousands of injustices occurring right now around the world, all the time. So it's not only impractical, it's impossible for you to physically pull that off, to actually speak up for all of them.
Yeah.
And to fight to end all of them all at once. I mean, think about how insane that is. So these people are being hypocrites because these people are choosing their causes, which is, guess what? You have our support. You have our full support to do that because we chose a cause.
Yeah.
And that's how it is. You guys are doing the same thing that we're doing. How about I'm actually taking this moment to see where we have something in common. And maybe you guys should do the same thing instead of looking at where we have a difference or where you think you're more holier than thou or something to that effect.
Have you considered this before? There's a concept that actually, I'll tell you who introduced me to it, but this was actually back in the day when things were a little bit nicer, but it was actually Anita who introduced me to this concept like maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when I brought up some comments about intersectionality, and I kind of warned Anita that it looked like this was going to start to take a turn for the worse. People were starting to attack me for not, saying certain things or for saying certain things. And I felt like it was starting to seep into organizations. And I mentioned this, and she told me, we won't do this because we are all about positive intersectionality. And she had this concept and this mindset, and it really inspired me actually, because she said, we can fight for the animals 100% always, but when there are situations where it also benefits humans, we can also note it. For example, look, these vegans went out and gave free food to the homeless because they're suffering. They're doing animal rights activism by teaching the homeless about veganism, and they're helping the homeless. For example, that would be a positive intersectional message, right? It's not, no one loses out here. The animals are focused and the homeless people have a focus. In Lebanon, for example, with the blast, the vegans, the local vegans, were doing incredible work. They were getting like food out to everyone. They were like, helping the vegan businesses in the area. They were helping the animals in the area. It was amazing. But you were also raising awareness of that corrupt government and how this even happened in the first place. It's 2 in 1. It's easy, right? And this was great. When she said this, I was really inspired. But obviously, we know how that went, and it didn't end up staying that way, unfortunately. But for you guys, like, what do you think about AV in that sense? Do you think this is something AV could do, like with social media? I mean, not with the cubes, but like with how you represent yourselves on social media. Is that something that you've thought about or would ever consider, or do you disagree with that kind of way of doing things?
What way of doing things specifically? What is being suggested?
So like, for example, when there are there are issues that potentially could be both benefited by raising awareness of it. For example, obviously AV is 100% focused on the animals, but let's imagine there is some of your AV organizers or your AV team goes out and gives food to the homeless, putting that on AV social media and saying like, look at what our awesome activists are doing. They're fighting for the animals and they're helping the homeless. Do you see a problem with doing something like that, or do you think that do you agree with that as an idea?
That specific suggestion just sounds like we would be, I don't see how that helps a human cause of any kind by making a post like that. I don't see that as activism to help a human cause. I mean, at best, it's congratulatory and supportive of individuals within our network who are doing that. I don't see that as activism, though. I don't see that as like fighting a human rights cause of some kind.
No, I guess not. But I guess it would be raising awareness that homeless people need food. I know people know that, or maybe inspiring other vegans to go out and outreach homeless people and give them food. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's an idea. It's just an idea, is what I mean. It's something that like I don't know if it even would count as intersectionality in that case. But for example, the Lebanon example would, because they have the corrupt government. They're oppressing their people. Making a post or making a video on that where you're saying, hey, look at what these awesome vegans are doing. They're fighting a corrupt government and they're also saving animals and they're getting people food. That would be a better example of how to raise awareness of two oppressions in one, without either of them losing anything, if that makes sense. Because it's not like we're just talking about, Lebanon. We're talking about vegan and activists in Lebanon. So like then it becomes something that encompasses all of it,
But I mean, I'm a bit confused because I don't see how it was like an animal rights thing that they did. They're just vegans, people who don't abuse and torture animals, animal rights activists who went and did a deed for humans. And that deed was a human rights good that they did. And when they were doing that act, that deed had nothing to do with the animals, really. It was just about...
Yeah, I think David was saying that they were kind of outreaching people when they were giving them the food.
Were they?
Yeah, I believe they were. I don't know this for sure, but I believe they were sending out like leaflets and stuff with the bags, and also they were rescuing animals too. They were actually rescuing animals off the street and getting them treated. They were raising money for that too. So they were doing a few. Yeah, it was like they were doing a few different things to try and help the animals and also the people.
Yeah, I didn't know the full extent of the campaign that they carried out over there. All I know is at the time I reached out and I checked in with them, and I was just wanting to know if they were okay during the whole blast.
Yeah.
But forgive my ignorance to those who were carrying out that awesome campaign, because it looked very helpful. I was just confused on how it was tied into animal rights. I just thought they were doing a good deed for humans in that moment. I didn't see how.
Maybe they were. Maybe they were. Maybe they were only doing that, some of them. But I know for sure some of them were also rescuing the animals. I guess, I mean, with a more concrete example, if let's imagine there is a concrete example of this where they're actually doing that, they're actually advocating for animal rights whilst simultaneously helping humans. I guess the question is, like, would that be something AV would consider to post about if it came up, or is there a reason not to? That's what I'm trying to understand. Like,
well, posting. So you're asking specifically about posting about it on social media. Our platform,
exactly, yeah.
Our platforms are for animal rights, for non-human animal rights. So that's our general response to that. But we do carry out what you're saying. We do take the opportunity to, how did you word it, to benefit humans while benefiting the animals. In those moments when we see any form of oppression or discrimination occurring within our organization, we stamp it out with the quickness, and we have a process that we go through to rid it from the organization. In those moments, we're taking action that benefits humans and the animals. We're just not posting about it, I guess, because our platforms, our network is for non-human animals. Okay,
I understand. So it's kind of like, yeah. So your base kind of, I don't know what to put it here. Your, let's say, default, your focus, your baseline, I keep using that word, is that the account is for non-humans, and that's kind of that's it basically. That's how it's going to be. Like social media and also the cubes, that's where it's going to stay, and that's your core kind of value basically. That's what you're saying here, right?
Yeah, like again, going back to the numbers thing, 3 trillion animals every year. If you think about the amount of victims that are involved in this injustice, how many more times more urgent would you say, in terms of the numbers, this injustice is than other injustices on the planet? How many more times more urgent would you say?
Totally.
mean,
It's not a criticism from me. I'm actually just trying to clarify. Yeah.
No, no,
Yeah,
no.
totally.
Maybe that was framed like I was like being defensive, but I'm asking a genuine question, because my next thing I was going to say, because I say that to say this, like that's how much more urgent it is for us to maintain a focus on using those platforms for that reason. So it's not,
Okay.
Yeah, just
Totally, and I don't see it as a negative. The reason I got into this discussion now is because I personally I see some benefit in that for myself personally. That's why I make some of the videos I make where I talk about vegans doing good work also for people. I see some benefit in it, and that's my choice. But that doesn't by default mean that your choice is wrong. And I think this is it's very important for anyone that watched this section and thinks, oh, but some people are going to agree with you, and they'll be like, no, keep the people off, right? Or just keep it really, really focused. And some people are going to agree with me and say, well, there's no harm in doing this, and maybe it'll help. And that's totally fine to have different opinions. It doesn't mean one of us is wrong and deserves to be cancelled, and the others are, deserve to be celebrated. It's just you align with who you align with, and if you align with Paul and Asal on this, then great. You do that for your page, and if you align with me, then great. You do what I said, and if you don't align with either of us, then I don't know, align with someone else and do that. Then it's not this isn't a case of being right or wrong. I just wanted to see what you thought about it on this specific example, this specific topic.
Okay, cool.
Let's all right, let's go to a more direct thing then, because I've got a few let's say more direct accusations, direct rumors, and we've talked about humans quite a lot now, and actually it's kind of shitty that I bring the co-founders of Anonymous for the Voiceless on and we just talk about people, but that's what we came here for. Maybe we can do another live stream where we actually get into the, into animal rights and activism and really, go for that. I think that would be nice to do, to kind of balance having to talk about this for such a long time. But these main accusations we've had, and this also comes in with the intersectionality and also comes in with the things you just discussed about your policies. The number one that came up multiple times was accusations of transphobia and pronouns. And you've dealt with this, obviously, Paul, you've dealt with this personally, and you've spoken about this in other places, but we are going to talk about it a bit here and some specific questions. Somebody's asked the question, well, I'll go for like the longer one, actually. There's a few questions, but this one's actually quite a well-written one. So they said they left AV, this individual, because apparently AV was focusing on the animals instead of encouraging respect between activists. They said that there was a situation where you guys decided to call people by birth names rather than calling people by their preferred pronouns. And for them, this was extremely offensive and wrong. And the discussion around the pronoun politics, or what you called, I think you called it something like identity politics. They found this to be, and a lot of people, I guess, found this to be controversial enough for them to leave AV, or at least not go to Cubes anymore. Mm-hmm. So I guess the question is, why has the decision been made to not use people's pronouns and use their first names instead, even if they want to be referred to by a pronoun?
I guess I'll answer.
These are mainly directed
at you. Gender pronouns are clearly ideological, and we don't. So you're just specifically asking about at the Cubes, like at AV?
I guess, yeah, let's keep it focused on like Cubes AV, yeah.
So I've never like personally been asked to refer to someone as a particular like name, and where I've refused to call them that name. That's never happened. It's obviously the polite thing to do to use the requested name of someone. But at Cubes, we don't even really need your name. So it makes no sense for us to apply a protocol regarding one's gender. So we don't even have a protocol regarding gender at all because it's not required. We barely need your name at the cube, and that's what we said regarding this whole thing. That's it.
So if like putting this into real life, like if someone actually did come to a cube and let's say it was one of your organizers or you, whichever, and they said, okay, I when you refer to me as like, you know, if they are like doing something and that you're talking about them, like they can't hear you or whatever, or maybe they're in the conversation, whatever, they want to be referred to as a she because now they're a trans woman, and is that something that you would respect? Or you would tell your organizers to respect, or would you tell them no, only refer to them by their name, like their first name?
Well, if by respect you mean, are we going to then call them a man in their face in order to make a point that we reject the notion that they identify as a woman? Well, of course, we're not going to do that. That would be impolite and counterproductive for our mission on the streets to begin with, which is to get on with non-human animal rights activism, not get caught up in issues between humans, human-centric issues. And the reason why I'm pointing out that I initially started with pointing out that this is clearly ideological is that we don't allow any other political ideologies to be carried out or political agendas to be carried out at the cubes of any kind. So we've never specifically targeted this in any way. You know, it's just across the board not welcome.
Sure. And what about in the case that someone doesn't actually believe or doesn't really agree with you that it's political? Because a lot of people who are become a trans woman or a trans man, they don't do it out of some political ideology. They do it because they have gender dysphoria, right? It's a medical condition, and them being referred to as a he or a she, it's nothing to do with their politics. It's to do with them being like validated as a person, right? So it's actually really important. I know there are a lot of trans activists out there who are making this very, very political. I understand that they exist, and there are people who are not even trans who make it political by forcing others to call them a he or a she when they don't have gender dysphoria. You know what I mean? I understand this is happening, and I understand standing up to that. But in the case where these people are genuine, and you know they are asking as a courtesy to help them adapt to this new life, for example, would that be a policy of AV to tell people, right, you refer to them as they want to be referred to, or is that not a policy in AV and it's no, you call them by name and that's it?
So just to clarify here, because I think there's some things being communicated that in this interaction that might lead people to think that we've commented on trans people when we haven't even commented on trans people at all, ever.
Okay.
Ever. My comments were only about gender pronouns, and gender pronouns are a completely different discussion to trans issues. Gender pronouns are used by people who don't even identify as trans. So I'm not talking about trans people. I've never said anything about trans people, and neither has Asal. And that needs to be clarified 100%, I think, because I don't appreciate getting tossed into that category of someone who has spoken about trans people when I haven't said a single word about trans people. My comments are about my skepticism towards gender pronouns and the use of gender pronouns and them being 50 plus gender pronouns. That was my comment. And this, like I said, at the Cube, there's no real need for even for someone's name. So if this is happening, this interaction is happening at a Cube where someone is offended because you haven't used their correct gender pronoun, that's what I mean by it becoming political and someone bringing a political agenda into that space when we don't even really require your name. So if that discussion is occurring at a Cube, it's likely because someone is choosing to make a rise out of it, and obviously if someone is, like I said already, going out of their way to disrespect somebody like this, yes, we would take issue with that 100%. We would see that as bullying. It would be impolite and it would be bullying to say, no, not only do I not believe what you believe, but your belief is stupid. That's bullying. right? So of course we don't condone that. But at the same time, forcing others to believe what you believe at the cube is not welcome. That's not what we're there for, right? Everybody has a different belief system when it comes to this topic, and people are entitled to have different opinions about this. And it's not a time and a space at a cube of truth to be fighting each other, to be engaging in this kind of discord when it's human-centric and we are supposed to be there for non-human animals. We should be respecting each other to have the right to have a different opinion and to just get on with the one thing we're supposed to be on the same page about, which is non-human animal rights deserve to have this 3 or 4 hours dedicated to them on the streets.
Yeah, I guess to kind of close this off, or I hope we can close it off, is if we have, I mean, obviously there are obviously trans activists, right? And I'm focusing on trans here because I understand what you're saying about gender pronouns, in that if somebody has chosen a pronoun because it's whatever, it's something they want to identify as, I understand why there's some skepticism here, because it's kind of like, all right, that's fine, you know, go ahead and do that, and people can respect that. But if they forget, or if they, I don't know, if they don't want to, and there's no real logic behind the reason that of you identifying as that, I can understand why someone, you know, not being into that. But where I'm specifically focusing on here, and I'm focusing on it because it is medical, it is a psychological thing, it is not something that's like opinion, is that, you know, gender dysphoria exists, like trans people exist, and we have to time, but now it's becoming more acceptable to discuss it, right? So you see a lot more people who are coming out this way, whereas in the past they wouldn't have done. They would have hidden it because they were embarrassed or ashamed, and they just go through their whole life with this situation, you know, with this problem. Nowadays, people are being encouraged to speak up about it, and you know, go public and get the operation and re-identify themselves so that they are who they are, right? What I'm trying to get here is that does AV have like something in place that is also accommodating that, so that if somebody does come to a cube as a trans person, and they want to be identified as a he, or a she, or they, if they're not sure, and somebody is, you know, if they get it wrong by accident, okay, I get that, that's something that, you know, it shouldn't, if it's a complaint, you just say, okay, hey, please, you know, don't get it wrong by accident in the future, like, do us a favor. But if they're choosing to get it wrong, if they're like actually saying, no, I don't accept that,
So
are you saying that, yeah, bullying, yeah, that could be bullying, yeah. But also I'm kind of trying to understand where the line's drawn between, well, that's your ideology, so tough shit, versus, well, okay, no, this is something that, this is you, this is who you are, and look, this person needs to respect that, or they're the one that'll be kicked out. Like, where are you drawing the line between the ideology versus the bullying, if you understand what I'm saying? Because maybe an organizer says, well, I don't need to respect that because I don't agree. Where's the line drawn?
Well, the line is simply drawn at, if the interaction at the cube requires your gender, then okay, we'll use whatever gender you choose us to use. However,
or whatever name, because in that case they can also use the name if the organizer or the volunteer feels uncomfortable or they don't align with the same ideologies. They don't have to use the pronoun, they can just refer to them with the chosen name. Yeah,
that's what I was going to say, is that the interactions of the cube don't actually require the gender. So that's what I was saying, is that if I'm trying to be charitable and open-minded here by saying, if there is a circumstance of the cube that requires the gender in the interaction to be successful in the communication, sure. No, not using that would be rude, it would be bullying. And there's no case at a Cube of Truth or within AV where this has happened, where we've bullied people and said, fuck your beliefs. That's never happened. It's just ridiculous to even suggest that has happened. But, you know, but it's not required. That's what we're saying. It's not required. It's
yeah.
This notion that it is required is a new notion that's being brought into AV. It's never been required.
And I think I know something that was brought up a while ago was people suggesting that at the start of the cube, because we do a briefing, right? When everyone's there getting ready to do the cube, somebody, or maybe a few people, suggested that we do this, like we go around and get people to introduce themselves and choose their preferred, like announce their preferred pronoun. And this is something that was brought up to us, and that was our response, because something like that 100% takes away from what we're doing, because it's not necessary and it's irrelevant. So to put time aside, 15-20 minutes for everyone to go around and say, my name is blah 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 and this is my preferred pronoun, which is unnecessary, because in case we need to refer to you, you let us know then. If we got it wrong, you correct us, that's fine, we can get on with our day. I know that that was something that was brought up, and I just wanted to clarify that.
There are many other things that are human-centric that we don't allocate our activism, our time to at the cubes to engaging in. And so you could use this same logic if you're claiming that we are discriminatory towards those who have, again, we've never even spoken about trans people, so I reject the notion of even commenting on trans people. People with gender pronouns, the same argument could be used for not honoring the custodians of the land and saying something about like the original custodians of the land, the Aboriginals or the Native Americans, depending on of the region that we're talking about here. We don't do that at the cubes either. Does that mean that we are also racist, or we're also colonialists, or whatever the word is that's being tossed around regarding that discrimination? No, of course not, because we're there for non-humans, and non-humans deserve a cause dedicated to them. That's what this comes down to, is if you think that we're being discriminatory under that logic, then you really just don't think that animals deserve a cause solely dedicated to them. That's what we're disagreeing about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess my what I was trying to get out of it here is try to get to clarify what for 100% this, which I think you have clarified now, is that like you don't want to bring up like, let's say, identity politics into cubing. You don't want it to become part of AV. You don't want it to become part of an action or an event. However, if somebody has a personal thing where they want to be referred to as a certain pronoun, or they've recently transitioned, that it is part of AV policies to respect that, because not respecting that would be considered bullying. That's what I'm trying to clarify here. So you're making a distinction between the two.
I also need to make the distinction here that we're referring to sex, if anything, whenever the word gender is being used in this conversation. We are not referring to anything other than sex. We are not referring, I'll repeat, to anything other than sex. And the conversation keeps getting skewed by others to be referring to gender, but regarding trans issues, or regarding this whole thing with my comments on being skeptical of gender pronouns, it was regarding sex that I was skeptical of this. There aren't more than two sexes, in my opinion. And I think that people are entitled to have that opinion. Trans people are transitioning between those two sexes. I think they have the right to do that. So I support the trans movement, if that's what it is, right? I have trans people that follow me, that support me, that like me, in the face of my comments and the hate I receive. Getting called a transphobe does not waver these people. I'm not trying to use them as a token. I'm just giving people context, because context is lost in our culture. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, I'm trying to wrap my head around it. And also, I was just taking care of a troll as well. I'm just asking Annie to get rid of a troll in the chat, as I was also trying to get that sorted. It seems like they're bothering people. So you obviously you make a separation between sex and gender, which I think that's scientific. There is actually, I think some people would argue, including myself, that there are three sexes, because there's intersex, which is very rare, but it exists, right? It's when someone's born with both, or like both genetics or whatever. I don't know too much about it, but I know that it exists. And then you're drawing the line because genders, it is an ideology. Gender ideology is new. It is new. If anyone's upset about this, then I'm not sorry, because you need to do some research on this and realize how gender ideology is a very recent thing, and it hasn't been put through the rigorous testing that most other psychological and scientific, concepts have, and about humans have been through. So it's not something that should be accepted just because it's big and because it's being pushed. But at the same time, for good or for bad, there are people out there who like specifically it is very much intertwined with the trans issues, which is why it keeps coming up. And this, you said earlier, I don't understand why people keep saying it's about trans. It's because I feel personally, tell me if I'm wrong, I feel like that I wouldn't say popularity, but the more exposure, let's say, the more awareness of trans and what it means to be trans has also come tied in with gender and gender identity.
Yeah,
because
I think people confuse the issue, though. I think deliberately they have confused the two. Now it's like all mixed in, but it doesn't need to be, because when we're talking about gender pronouns and gender, we're talking about gender roles, and like you can be a female, like you can be born a female in a female body, but you may not necessarily feel like you are fitting into that, that, I don't know, mindset or that gender role, and that's totally fine. But that's not what we're talking about. When we're talking about like someone transitioning, you're talking about them changing their body, and that's the sex. It's like when you go to the doctor, they care about knowing your birth sex, because the doctor needs about your body and your biology. So that's why sex and gender are different. And if anyone wants to confuse the two, it's just not gonna, that's fine, but that's just not the reality of it. They're completely separate.
And my trans supporters tell me this, and I agree with them. Conflating gender politics, the gender pronoun issue in society that's been brought up with the trans movement and the struggle of trans people is actually diminishing them as victims of their struggle. So it takes away from what they're really dealing with, and they're not struggling with gender pronouns necessarily. Like the struggles are different. They're struggling with just being accepted as a trans person, and that's a different discussion completely to what we're discussing here. This is what they tell me, and I agree with them. And so
it's a different struggle.
It's disrespectful to the trans movement to just attach all these other things to it and say that's a trans issue too.
Yeah.
If you care about the trans movement, then you wouldn't do that.
I understand. So yeah, there's a distinction between just wanting to identify as one of the limitless genders and actually suffering from gender dysphoria and changing your sex and wanting to be referred to as a different pronoun because it validates who you are and it's something that you have struggled through. You're drawing, there's a distinction between the two, basically, is what you're saying, right?
There absolutely is, and trans people around the world feel diminished because of this incessant, obsessive need to link it to everything else, and they're already diminished on top of that.
But although you hold this belief, and obviously AV operates on this not belief, I wouldn't say, but let's say opinion, that AV operates also on this opinion, like that AV will not accept people bringing in ideologies without, let's say, like obviously the trans movement isn't an ideology, not for the people who are actually suffering from gender dysphoria anyway, although there are people who are calling themselves trans who are actually don't have gender dysphoria. Then that's an ideology. I would say that's different. That's a political ideology or some, I don't know, ideology of some sort. But unfortunately, I would say it is difficult to actually determine who is who, right? And who is for real, and who is doing this because they genuinely, are a trans person, and who is doing this because they want to get on board with an ideology and kind of, I don't know, be different. I guess how is AV going to operate with that? Because I know that you like you've just said, you accept people who have and you accept and will respect people who are genuinely, are trans or whatever. If they have whatever condition, the AV will respect them, and people will be booted if they don't respect them. But then also in the same breath, you're saying that the political ideology is not actually welcome. So if somebody isn't actually trans and they are just identifying as someone else because it's something they want to do, so how is AV going to actually, how would you operate with these two individuals, let's say, being around? How are you going to determine who should be respected and you know, should be dealt with in a very, you know, respectful way, and who should actually be told, no, you don't bring your ideologies here, leave it at home?
Well, everyone needs to be respected.
Okay.
Everyone, including, yeah, that's the answer. Everyone needs to be respected. So, I mean, everyone is entitled to their opinions, but no one is entitled to weaponize their opinions against others. And that's my most accurate answer to that, okay?
Sure.
Everyone is respected for their opinions and the right to have an opinion. No one has a right to weaponize their opinion against others in any way. And so that's it. I mean, you know, where do we draw the line with human stuff as well? Because we allow people who are disabled to come to our cubes and rock a wheelchair in the cube. We've had so many people in wheelchairs in our cubes around the world. We don't say, we don't, you know, we welcome these people. I don't know why I'm using that as a point. I guess it's just, of course, we welcome different struggles, and we accommodate different struggles within AV, but only as far as getting the job done is required, because we're there for the animals. And that just needs to be respected also. Everyone needs to be respected for the mission when we're at the cube. But I think we should move on now to the next subject.
All right. Can I close off with a bottom line then? Bottom line, yes or no question, and then we'll move on. Is that all right with you? But bottom line, yes or no then. So what I'm understanding is that someone comes to the cube, they request to be called a certain thing. People in the cubes, the organizers, are requested to respect that. And if they get it wrong by accident, no worries, don't do it again. If you get it wrong on purpose, you're being disrespectful, and you'll be if it comes up, you will be either told off or I don't know, warned, and saying that that's bullying. Am I right? Is that correct? Have I understood this correctly, or is there something I've missed?
Sorry, I just kind of zoned out for a bit. So you said,
all right,
somebody got it wrong by accident, no worries, obviously. Yeah. Like, what are we going to do? And then if they did it on purpose, they're going to get kicked out. Is that what you said?
Well, not kicked out, whatever it may be. They'd be either warned, or if it's been multiple times, let's say you would take a further action if it's becoming a habit, you know, if it's something they've done more than once, for example.
Yeah. Yeah, basically. But like what I was saying earlier, if somebody feels that strongly about it, that they're not willing to, because they feel like they're accepting that ideology by referring to, say you showed up at a cube and you want to be referred to as she, and like, I just can't accept that, then in that case, they could refer to you with your name. And if they're not willing to do that, then yes, that would be an issue, because then that person, by insisting on not wanting to refer to you as whatever, then that person is taking away from the event in the cube, because they're making it about something else.
Yeah, okay. But I think that that seems reasonable to me. But I guess it's not good enough for everyone, for a lot of people. But I feel like it's reasonable. I just wanted to clarify it before we moved on, though.
Yeah. Before we move on, I just want to say one more time, like, this has literally never happened. In our personal experience, has never happened. And I haven't heard of a specific event where this was the issue and this was brought up and somebody, you know, had an issue with referring to someone else with their preferred name or pronoun. So I just want to say how uncommon this is. But yeah.
Sure. I guess it's just about future-proofing, because this is the world we're in now. You know, I don't think it's a bad world that we're in. I think it's good. I think That's why I wanted to really get into it, because I am 100% certain that as we go into the future, this is going to become more and more and more common, and not just in AV, in other organizations, like, you know, jobs, like people working in offices and stuff like that. This is going to start becoming more and more common, because people, you know, in general, people don't like change in general. So you're gonna have to. I feel we all have to expect there are going to be some people out there who are going to cause problems on both sides of this. You know, not only on the people rejecting the idea side, but also the people demanding they be referred to as a certain thing. It's only going to become more prevalent. I guess that's why I feel like it's an important topic to get into.
Well, again, like, you know, yeah, to cap this off with a black and white answer, and then
Sure,
you know, it works the other way as well. Like, no bullying will be allowed, but also if you're bullying others to believe what you believe at the cube, that's not allowed either. If you're not required to give us your gender in that interaction, and you're forcing it anyway, that's an issue.
Yeah.
That's a problem, because that's not productive communication and teamwork when the goal is supposed to be non-human animal rights.
Yeah, it goes both ways. Yeah.
sure. But basically, just respect each other. It's the bottom line.
That's why I said earlier, the answer to this is everyone will be respected. That's the rule.
All right, got it. All right, cool. Let's we're going from one to another, I guess. In terms of this, I think these might be a little bit easier to get into, though, because there's a few more direct accusations that came through. However, they didn't really come through with any kind of backing, but I wanted to put them to you as like a topic of like, why do you think people are saying this, right? And you can tell me why you think people are saying this. So there's been accusations of racism as well against AV as an organization, and also, I'm sorry, Paul, but it tends to be coming at you most of the time with these things. Asal seems to get off the hook. But this racism, apparently AV is racist, and apparently Paul is racist, and I think some of this did come from the BLM post. But that was an AV thing. That wasn't necessarily a Paul thing. Why do you think people are coming at you and making accusations that you are a racist individually, Paul or Asal? Not AV. We'll deal with AV in a second. But why do you think it's coming for you that people say this?
Who isn't being called a racist in 2020? I'm sus on anyone not being called a racist in 2020. I'm answering quantum physics in that question. I don't know the answer. It's like,
yeah, I don't know why.
Why are humans the way they are? I don't know. It's I actually haven't ever heard anyone directly call me a racist because of the BLM post, like me personally.
No, that's an AV thing, I think, as a general thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we have been called a racist, both of us. Not over that post, though. But yeah, I don't know why. I'm not sure why, actually.
I'd like to see evidence. Your Honor, the evidence, please.
Yeah, I think there was a post. I'm just remembering now. I think that it could have, I don't know, contributed to it. I think where you were talking to you were outreaching a black guy, and you said some things about, you know, you defended the animals, and I think some people found it to be somehow racist because of the words you used. And do you remember that at all? Like,
Yes, a black guy was a black girl, so you misgendered her, David. You should really be ashamed of yourself. Let's cancel David immediately. Hashtag Telegrams.
Trust me. Out of this video, this is not going to be the thing that gets taken. There's things we've said already that I've as they came out of my mouth, I was like, yeah, that's going to be screenshotted. That's going to be all over the place soon. So no, don't worry. We're already, that boat has sailed. We're done.
So if you watch the video, guys, she was making a point to me that she doesn't need to take animal rights seriously, especially even if she is the oppressor in this scenario as a non-vegan, because black people are oppressed. That was her argument that she put to me. And she even said something to the effect that speciesism doesn't apply to me and my people. And I said it applies to anybody who oppresses animals, who isn't vegan. She carried on, and I felt it was only right to make the point that animals are the most oppressed group of beings on the planet. It felt to me the most appropriate thing to say at that time, because I speak on behalf of the animals. If I was in their position, that's exactly what I would want to be said in that moment, so that that person had the correct perspective. Whether they accept the truth is not my. I don't have any skin in that game. My mission is to tell the truth on behalf of the victims, because it's the least that we can do. So that's what I said, and that was what people have called me racist over.
So that was like, I mean, it's let's be like, let's not bullshit here. It's definitely something that would be considered to be like insensitive, but that's not the goal isn't to be sensitive. A lot of, I don't think being insensitive is necessarily something negative. I think sometimes it needs to be like that. But how is that translating to racism? Like, if somebody said, Paul, you're fucking insensitive, I don't think I'd even bring that up, because it's like, well, yeah, that's obvious. Like, your outreach videos tend to be towards the side of insensitivity and more towards the side of like straight, direct, like you're going to get the message whether it pisses you off or not, right? If you're being sensitive, you would dress it up and be nice, but you're not being, and that's not something to criticize, in my opinion, or it is, whatever, but that's not the point here. The point is racism. So how does that translate to racism? How do you think someone gets it from that video, that that's you somehow, disrespecting somebody because of their ethnicity?
Just because of her skin color, right?
Well, no. Again, no. It's not just. Well, it's not just that.
If you were speaking to a white woman, would you get the same?
No, of course not. But it's not just that. It's also the fact what people are overlooking here is if we are going to entertain the notion that there was insensitivity at play here, people are overlooking the fact that she was being incredibly insensitive to the animal victims, that she is an oppressor of, directly responsible for victimizing herself. And so that's where it started. That's where the context of all of this began. I was responding to her, not by saying fuck black people and fuck black rights, but by saying animals are the most oppressed group of beings on the planet. If me pointing out a fact is insensitive, while she's literally saying fuck the animals and fuck their rights, well, I guess you need to ask yourself, what does it take for you to see injustice for what it is, especially when it's to the degree that it is, in this case with the animals, when they're subjected to the most brutal violence that has ever been carried out on any group of beings ever. What does it take for people to just literally just acknowledge them, and to acknowledge the fact that they are subjected to oppression to the extent that they are subjected to that oppression? And for people to simply say that, for people to simply speak about that, if that's offensive, we have no hope as a species evolving and developing into better ways of living on this planet, and with truly addressing injustice and oppression on this planet. It's never going to happen unless we change the way we think around things like this.
Yeah, I think honestly, my opinion on this is like to label that as racism is offensive. It's offensive because it's not even offensive. It's harmful because it confuses what actual racism is, right? How can you call, like, and this when you really lay it out like this, right? You've got two people of color. You're not white, so two people of color having a conversation about the animals, and one of the people says that, the reality about the animals, and somehow that person is racist. It's just such a strange thing to call racism over, and it completely takes away the meaning of the word. And I've said this before, people get really upset about it, that the more you use the word racist, sexist, transphobe, the more difficult it becomes to actually identify racists, sexists, and transphobes. And I think nowadays we're in a position where it's like you said, who hasn't been called a racist? Or a transphobe or a sexist in 2020, practically anyone who has dared to even question the narrative has been called one of those things. It's either you do what you're told and you say what you're supposed to say, or that's what you get branded with. you know how harmful that is to the people who actually suffer from sexism, racism, and transphobia? The fact that you know that label is so used so flippantly.
If you could say that for every other label that is thrown around to try and cancel others when it's baseless, whether it's the term fascist or sexist or racist or whatever it is, these people are supposed to care about these injustices when they're literally spitting in the faces of the victims that are subjected by those injustices when they do that.
Definitely. And moving on to the AV racism claim, the BLM post that was the center of apparent racism. You know, this is apparently that post was in itself racist, and those it's gone now, obviously. But for those who didn't see it, it was the image, the famous image that went around of a BLM activist, black man holding a pig's head by the ears, a severed pig's head by the ears, to protest against police brutality. And AV put out an image with the caption, and it ended up causing so much controversy and claims of racism and all these things, and it was removed in the end, right? So, like, tell us I know you've done it before. Again, I'm sorry you have to keep repeating yourself, but you know we're aiming to get through everything today. But tell us the story behind that then, and you know, if you think that was racist as well, and the reasons you removed it.
So it wasn't removed.
Okay.
It wasn't removed, you know, as a result of like. So just to clarify, it's still up on our Instagram. It's only been removed on Facebook because we stupidly took. I want to say take the bait. We took the bait. I don't know if that's the proper term to use here, but whatever. With regards to what the donor was demanding of us at the time throughout the whole debacle that we went through with the donor. And so we made a decision to remove that post only because this donor was threatening to remove our funding. And it was the only thing that we were willing to consider doing out of all the demands that they gave us. We completely rejected the notion of a board of directors, and the other things we really pushed back on, and we tried to be as charitable and open to these demands as possible, which is why we deleted that post as a decision we made. And at this point, we had deleted it probably a month and a half or 2 months after the post was made. So at that point, it had seen most of its traction, you know. So I just want to clarify, it wasn't removed after getting heat from people in the comment section or anything like that. It was a post that we believe needs to happen. It's just the way that we communicated in that post that we felt we could improve on. And we have already addressed this within the organization, because recently we saw the same thing happening at another protest in Spain, and we made a post about that. It didn't get as much traction, but you know, so there's something to be said about being direct about these things when it's unpopular. We share a lot of unpopular opinions. That's what we do, because the truth is unpopular at the best of times. And we are committed to speak up against animal oppression wherever we see it. So if it's being paraded on the main stage, in the mainstream, on the news everywhere around the world as a appropriate and acceptable way of addressing human centric injustices, you know, to hold decapitated heads up, to say fuck the police, then we have a responsibility to say something about that. No oppression is acceptable ever. No one has the right to oppress anyone else ever in any situation ever, and that's supposed to be the ethos behind these protests that were occurring this year, and that's our ethos. So we should be seeing eye to eye, but yeah, that's really our responsibility to do that. But yeah, we removed that post as a result of the donor, and we regret that decision. I don't know how else to say it, but it's, I mean, we still have it on Instagram. It's not being removed from Instagram, so take from that what you will.
Sure. So it's that's, yeah, that clarifies a lot. And just to clarify here, like you don't believe that post was racist, right? No.
Like what we said, it could have been communicated better. And that's why before we removed it, we actually went in and edited the post a little bit. So we changed the wording in certain parts so that there was more empathy, or, you know, it didn't come across as insensitive, like you said, but absolutely no, it wasn't racist.
So I think that's a wider issue, really, isn't it? Insensitivity versus racism or whatever ism you want to attach. It's not bigoted to be insensitive. It's some people are, I don't know, harsher than others, and I think on a personal level, I think that's where a lot of the criticisms and accusations come from with AV. I don't think it's. I think it is that our movement is quite a sensitive movement with very sensitive people, and AV isn't isn't very sensitive. And that's not, I don't mean that as a criticism at all. I mean that as in some people don't like that, and that's you know, that's where we get a lot of people who come up and speak up about it. Whereas if you look at an organization like SAVE, for example, they're the complete opposite side. They're extremely sensitive, so they attract a lot of people who are you know, also extremely sensitive, which happens to be the vast majority of the animal rights movement and the vegan movement. People tend to be very sensitive in these groups. So, you know, I can see where the accusations come flying in from, but I think if they were accusing you of insensitivity and being too mean, I think that would probably be nowhere near as harmful as throwing the word racist at every turn, you know? Yeah. That's my observation anyway. That's what I'm observing from the outside. And this kind of this continues really with the social media. People have been upset by your social media quite a lot. And I know some of these examples are going to be very easy to discuss, but we'll start off with the most difficult one just to kick it off with this. I want to discuss the whole Hitler thing and George, because a few people asked me about this. They asked me about George. They asked me about this post, this which obviously I know you removed it, but they kind of want to know how it got to the point where someone in the organization would think about making a post, a comment like that, and kind of what you guys think about it. So, if again, for those who don't know, there was a post made. I believe it was AV's page as well, wasn't it, on Facebook? It was a comment where the comment was talking about Hitler, and it was comparing Hitler and it was saying basically, out of context here, by the way, completely out of context, and I've not got the screenshot, so I'm not going to put it up, but out of context, it was making a comparison and saying that the Holocaust that Hitler did had more justification than the Holocaust of the animals. I'm paraphrasing here. It was put into a better context than that, but that was the takeaway message, that it had more justification because a book was written about it, practically. Or have I missed a big point there? But either way, that seemed to be the takeaway point from it, out of context, and that was obviously posted by, I believe, George in the organization as AV. So, like, what happened with this? Have I got that wrong? Have people got that wrong? What was the situation?
He's not saying that. He wasn't saying like legitimate justifications were afoot in those cases. He was saying that more reasons were provided by Hitler and his regime to the public than what non-vegans offer to the public regarding the injustice that they're involved in. That's what he was saying. But the way that he said it lacked EQ. You got to have IQ. George is a smart guy, but you got to have EQ too. You got to read the room and not be an idiot about how you communicate emotionally. So that's the thing. It wasn't clear enough. The communication we identified as something that needs to be improved, and that's why we addressed the whole BLM post to begin with the way that we did. It was about the communication, and we still feel justified in addressing what we addressed, and we will continue to do so. But I think, you know, sometimes, yeah, the issue there was sometimes there's bias that's brought into the work that people are doing within AV. They bring their own biases, whether they're political or otherwise, in the way that they communicate. And people need to remember, if they're working with AV, they're representing AV just like with any other org or group that they're working with. And when you're representing us, we don't want that. And, you know, he also did admit to doing this himself. So it's not just an opinion that we had. This was really happening, and that was the issue that you're pointing out, David.
Sure. And George and another individual, they were removed from the team. Was that because of this specific example, or was there another reason that these individuals were removed?
No,
that was another question somebody asked.
That was one of the comments, but there were other comments left by George, but also it was the conversations we had in private with them about the issue. I believe the comments were about denying that systemic oppression exists, and how that comment was left by our social media members without them running it by us, and that's not something that just didn't align with us or AV or other team members. So that's why we had to have private conversations to clarify this, and during those conversations we realized that we're just not aligned, and it was just not possible at that point to have them on the team.
Sure.
Yeah.
But just to clarify here, because it might be confused by people in what we're saying here, that like Gemma and George were like fired on the same premise. They weren't removed from AV on the same premise. There was a different scenario for those both individuals. Like a different decision process for both of those individuals. There were different things that occurred with George as well. It wasn't just one thing. It wasn't one comment or one post.
It was like multiple comments and then multiple conversations that we were having that made it clear that, yeah, but it was different.
And it wasn't just this.
No, it was like another example was about how, because the comment that you just read out, I didn't remember that one, but I know there was another one going around about how, well, our team said systemic oppression doesn't exist in the West or something like that, which we were getting lots of messages about. And so I do remember that very clearly, but there were multiple things. Otherwise, we wouldn't just ask someone to leave the team over one comment. Especially
someone who was an asset to the organization. George was a prized member of the team whom I really liked working with, and I thought that he was a great member. So it's ridiculous that we would, yeah, it's tough to be in this position. You know, that's the thing also, like, it sucks to have to fire someone like George.
Yeah, I just want to add, because it's okay to have your own political views, your religious views, but if you are commenting as AV, as a part of the team, and then those views are coming through your comments and your messages, then that's not okay. Because within the team, like I said, we have over 20 people or something, and we all have different views.
And then
we have our own political views or our own views on God or religion or whatever, but you never see us commenting about it when we're commenting as AV, because AV is supposed to represent something that is just about the animal. So regardless of your views, you can be a part of that. And that was the issue, that it was just not possible to have that with those individuals.
And people don't seem to be wanting to work with us to create the most conducive organization that is dedicated to the animals. People don't seem to be working with us to achieve this. We seem to be dedicated to it, and everyone seems to be pushing back and pushing back and pushing back. We are open to ideas. We want to see how we can help other things here, but we have, like Asal was saying, we have other people in the organization who have even stronger political views than George does. Even stronger political views than George does. Think about that. You know,
yeah.
And
yeah, sure.
And they never let their biases come through their work. So But again, it's not to focus on just one point here, because it wasn't just a one-dimensional decision. It was multi-dimensional.
And that's also kind of intertwined with with another kind of criticism I had about the comments. Like there were, I don't know if there still are, I haven't seen any since this, but there were quite a lot of, let's say, rude comments on the AV social media. Let's say, like, sometimes I think I even saw one, someone shut the fuck up, like STFU in a comment. I personally saw that myself at one point, and I was like, who the fuck said that? Like, that was quite a surprise for me to see. Is this something that you guys stand behind? Are you okay with, like, going out and telling people, like, if they're being, if they're acting silly, or if they're being silly, is that with your social media team? Are they like, go and do that? Or was this some bad actors in the team that are now not doing that? How has that changed? Because I haven't seen it since. It seems like when the whole thing happened with George, it seemed after that social media has been direct, but there's not been any of this, like, shut up and the rude comments seem to have almost stopped. So am I right in assuming that was linked, or is this something you've changed internally and now it's different?
Well, it's not that. Yeah, it's not that George was just cursing people out using our account. I think we need to see, like, specific examples of where this has happened for us to comment more specifically about those things. But, like, generally, we don't just curse people out. No, we don't. But we do speak in a real way. And so sometimes you might see us calling someone a dick because they're acting like a dick. And it won't be without us communicating effectively. We're not just calling them a dick. And if you just don't be a dick yourself and just conclude it that way, when there's more context involved here. If you read the entire comment, usually you can see us responding with a response that educates the viewer, the reader, and we're not just telling them to fuck off or to shut the fuck up or whatever it is. That's not what we do. We're out to edify people.
Sure.
Hold them accountable. When you hold people accountable, sometimes you have to be real with them, and you have to call them out and say you're being a dick when they're being a dick.
Sure. And this links in with the vegetarian drama, let's call it. So this is something that AV does focus on quite a lot. And Asal, I know you actually made posted a video on this relatively recently about vegetarians. That's another big criticism. The criticism being that AV attacks vegetarians. That's the criticism. Like that's come up a lot, actually. And I've seen that not only in my own, me asking people for questions, but also when you're just scrolling, and if you're in Reddit or something like that, one of the common things that comes up is, like, AV is counterproductive because they attack vegetarians. I think I already know how you're going to answer this, but maybe it's a bit of an easier one to deal with. What do you respond to these people who get upset about that and say you're attacking vegetarians?
Which vegetarian? We've never targeted a specific vegetarian. We attack vegetarianism. And I think that vegetarianism is the single greatest cancer in the animal rights movement, other than vegans themselves. Being number one, actually. Vegans are number one, the number one threat to the animal rights movement. Vegetarians are operating in society under this idea, this image of being on the side of the animals. They're portraying themselves as animal people, quote unquote, right? And whenever they speak to vegans, generally speaking, of course, the majority of these individuals are pompous, and they tell you that you don't need to talk to them because they're already vegetarian, is the way that they would frame it. I'm already vegetarian. So these people, on paper, in terms of the facts, are doing exactly as much as someone who's paleo is doing for the animals, because they don't consume dairy. Vegetarians don't consume flesh. Dairy is considered more cruel to cows than eating their flesh is, the dairy industry. We as animal rights activists tend to say this stuff. So it's not just me saying that. So if that's the case, paleo people are more in alignment with us than vegetarians are. But that logic is flawed. So it's in saying that they would get a pass for being portrayed as animal people. And as long as they continue to parade and act like they are animal people, the longer it will take to get vegetarians to become vegan. And the more we make a mockery of the real animal rights message for everybody else. And the longer that vegans coddle vegetarians, and again, I'm not talking about any specific vegetarian, talking about vegetarianism. The longer we coddle vegetarianism, the longer it will take for animal rights to be taken seriously in the public eye.
I think I can't remember which one of you said it, or if it actually was one of you, but there was the quote that vegetarians are contributing to one less form of animal abuse than a meat eater. They contribute to every other form of animal abuse, just not meat, just not flesh. And that was for me, that was very powerful. And I feel like that was a quote, that was a sentence that really brought it home to me, that actually, yeah, we should be targeting vegetarianism as, just the same as we would target anyone else, who's a non-vegan, because it's just there's only one difference between them. Even more, because non-vegans don't say, you don't need to talk to me, I'm non-vegan. They know that they need, that's the correct conversation to have with them. They know that they're culpable, right? It's the same as someone who's non-vegan who doesn't support animal testing. They never buy cosmetics that are tested on animals. I mean, they don't support one form of animal injustice.
Yeah, there are many non-vegans like that.
They don't claim to be exempt from the message regarding meat, dairy, and eggs. Vegetarians do claim to be exempt from hearing that.
Yeah, it's just very counterproductive to separate like vegetarians and the rest of non-vegans. Because I see that a lot from vegans and animal rights activists. They think that they should get a different treatment, but really vegetarians are just non-vegan, so let's not separate them. The reason why we focus on it is because we want to change their mentality. It's not because there's any difference. We're not like singling them out. It's the same. It's just non-vegans.
It's just clarifying the message on behalf of the animals.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah, this for me was an easy topic because I also focus on vegetarians for the same reasons. I think it's something our movement really needs to shake. People need to shake their head on this and just realize that these vegetarians, they're not helping us. They're not our allies. Understanding veganism doesn't help anyone. Like, oh, I understand you, or I'm supportive of you, I'm a vegetarian. It doesn't mean shit. And I think the more we start to realize that, the better and the easier things are going to be in the long term. So Asal, actually, I have a specific topic for you, and this was actually only brought up yesterday. So that's why I don't know if you got a chance to. I'll explain it now. So basically, the Impossible Burger. All right, you did your video when was it, earlier this year? I don't know if you've thought about it since then, but
I think it's been like 2 years now.
Was it 2 years? Wow. Okay. I don't know. I watched it only recently anyway, so I don't know if you've had a chance to catch up on that, or if you still think the same. But somebody brought this up, and they were very passionate about it, and they wanted to discuss this. Apparently, according to them, again, don't know if this is true or not, a lot of people left, or at least stopped going to Cubes, or even some chapters maybe even closed over a disagreement about the Impossible Burger and the video that you made. I watched the video. Obviously, I watched the video. I only watched it yesterday, so it's fresh in my mind. And your positions on the Impossible Burger, and I went through it. How do you respond to people who have this, like, they don't believe that AV is abolitionist because of you being the founder, holding the view that you hold that an Impossible Burger it's vegan because they tested on animals. I'll explain the video if you want really quickly for anyone that's watching real quick. I watched it yesterday, so it's really fresh. In the video, Asal basically makes the claim, takes the position that practically every single E number and additive has been tested on animals at one point. So pretty much every vegan product you would buy has something in it that has been tested on animals, but not by the company that you're buying it from. The Impossible Burger, Impossible Foods did the testing themselves, but the product now that's in the store technically hasn't been tested on. It's the product that the one thing that was in it was previously tested. So therefore it's in the same category as another item that you would buy. They've both been tested at some point. And if you take issue with the Impossible Burger, then how long does it have to be before we don't take issue with it anymore and it becomes in the same category as the other products that were once tested on animals? That's the position that Asal takes. So if anyone's got a question about that, either super chat it or save it for later. But yeah, how would you respond to someone now who says, right, that makes AV non-abolitionist because AV is supporting a product that was tested on animals, and they take the position that because Impossible Foods did the testing, and they have not actually said they wouldn't test again. So Impossible have said they will test again if they feel that they say need to, but let's be honest, we don't need that burger, right? So they say they would do it again. And some people are saying because of that AV is not abolitionist, and that's why they don't want to work with AV anymore. What do you think of that?
Well, I just think that to be consistent, exactly what you said, if we are consuming products that at one time in the past they were tested or an ingredient was tested, we also use many products that again were either tested or they are produced by a company that is not vegan. And you know, like we can just keep going down this rabbit hole, but ultimately to be consistent with the values that we have, I think it's okay to say that if you're vegan and you eat the Impossible Burger, you're not suddenly not vegan. That's literally what I was saying. I wasn't promoting it necessarily, but I was saying the Impossible Burger is as vegan as the Beyond Burger, because one of the things that I don't think I mentioned in that video, and I think it's something that I actually learned after doing that video, was that when they were working on the Beyond Burger, they were buying burgers made of cow flesh and they were testing them, or they were maybe just having a tasting session or whatever to get the texture or the flavors right. So I don't see any difference between the two. In one scenario, cows are being murdered for the burgers, and in the other scenario, mice are being murdered because they're being tested on. So I just see them exactly the same. They're just different animals that are being used in the process. But I just think to be consistent, you either have to say, I don't use anything that was ever tested or is ever coming from a company that uses animals or uses animal testing, or you're just going to have to accept that we do live in a non-vegan world. And as much as possible, yes, sure, you can avoid it, but I just don't see the difference between, like I said, that product and other products that we're using, like the Beyond Burger, which nobody has ever taken an issue with. I haven't seen it.
And if I can just add to this argument
Sure.
that we as an organization have made essentially regarding this topic, the only arguments I've ever heard from those who are trying to damn us by saying that we're not abolitionists because we hold this position, the only argument I see coming from these people is an argument for how Impossible Foods as a company is not vegan, to which we totally agree with. The company is not vegan. The product itself, however, is vegan. And that's why Asal's made the distinction between this and any other company that sells a vegan product. A non-vegan company selling a vegan product has always been a product that vegans consume and are still considered to be vegan when they consume it. And we don't, you know, when you said we don't need the Impossible Burger, that the same could be said for every other product that exists on the shelf. So where do you draw the line? Yeah. And how do we make veganism practical for people? By saying you can only support vegan companies. If you're only supporting vegan companies in this modern world we live in, I don't think veganism is possible. It's actually, I think, an irresponsible message if we truly care about animal liberation. Yeah.
So there's 2 points I'd like to push on a little bit further with this. One of them being that, what do you think about this? This is internal. Okay, I'm with you, and I think that I just want to put this point away. Actually, that this we're not, in my opinion, what we aren't discussing here is the message we put out to the public, because I don't believe that it's going to be in any way beneficial for us to slam the Impossible Burger to the non-vegan public. Right? That doesn't make any sense. Whatever they tested it on animals. Yeah, it's shit, but it's making tracks with non-vegans, and I don't know. I feel like it's more of an internal thing that we discuss in this, like, as part of the animal rights movement. Should this be an accepted thing, like into the movement or into veganism? Should this burger be accepted? Should these products be accepted? I feel like that's what we're discussing more than a public statement. And that being said, so a company like, I mean, that's where I stand on it anyway. That's why I don't want to get into like, should we talk about it, you know, pushing it to the public or not. I don't really think advertising vegan consumerism is, I don't really agree with that anyway. I'm not posting about Subway's vegan option or McDonald's vegan option. That's
we don't
not
do
for
that.
me.
Like we don't.
AV has never done
Yeah.
that.
No, I know that's, yeah. I think we're on the same page with that. That's why I think we can just kind of go on, because I don't like that. I see others doing it. I'm like, okay, cool, but it doesn't sit right for me to promote these massive monster companies. It doesn't feel right.
Right.
But if people do it, that's their call, right? It's not for me.
Yeah.
My point I was going to make though with this is that, so for example, Quorn is a massive company in the UK. I don't know if they're in Australia too, but they're one of the, oh cool. So like the OG like fake meats, mock meat companies, and they have this thing called microprotein, and that was tested on animals when they first released it, but the pushback was so intense from vegetarians that they had to like reconvene, and they released a statement where basically the I think it was the CEO, I can't remember, it's on their website right now. He basically says that he regrets it, that he wishes that he did it differently, or she, I can't remember if it's a guy or a girl, and they said they will never test on animals ever again. This company will never do it ever again, and we totally listen to your feedback and it's done. Versus, unfortunately, the Impossible Burger, Impossible Foods, and I think Beyond Foods as well, I think Beyond Meat also say this, they're saying the opposite. Like, they're saying they're going to continue to test. For me and for many, I think that's where they draw the line and say, wait a minute, okay, testing once is one thing. Testing once and saying, yeah, we see you're pissed off and we know it's wrong, but we're going to do it again if we want to. They draw a distinction between these two companies, and one being like, okay, we'll support this one, and the other one they say, no, we're not going to support them because they're pro-vivisection. You know, where do you stand on that comparison?
That logic doesn't work. That logic does not work, because Quorn is still selling products with cheese and egg in it, or at least egg.
Yeah, they have a vegetarian range and a vegan range.
So
right?
yeah, okay, they're against animal testing. They're still not a vegan company, however.
Yeah.
In exactly the same way that Impossible Foods is not a vegan company.
Yeah.
So
sure, bad comparison then. Yeah.
Well, no, it's just people are getting angry about what they choose to be angry about.
Sure.
Yeah, again, I think it's about being consistent. That's a great point, because they're not a vegan company and the whole range is not vegan. So why are we only taking issue with animal testing and not what happens to the animals in the dairy and egg industry?
Sure. It's a bad. That's my bad. That's a bad comparison with Quorn. I guess what I was trying to get at is with supporting a company that is going to say that they're going to continue to test on animals, but is producing plant-based burgers. Like, is there no ethical consideration to be had here? I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Of course there. Come on, man. Of course there is. Of course we need to ask Impossible Foods to cut the shit and stop testing on animals and to be vegan. But the point here is that expecting them to be vegan before you buy their product, which is vegan standalone in and of itself, is just a ridiculous standard to apply. If you're going to do it, you have to be consistent, and that would make it impractical to be vegan. It would make it impossible to be vegan. And I don't mean to use that pun, but we're in an impossible situation.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I think that's all I wanted to ask about that. I don't think there's anything else I can go through. Asal, do you have anything to close on there, with it being mainly the question targeted at you? Is there anything else you'd like to say to people who are still like dubious about this or unsure about this?
I think that's it. Just the last point that you said about, you know, how they've basically said they will test in the future, and then Quorn saying they will never do it again. I just think, I personally, on a personal level, I don't take that seriously anyway. Just because the CEO came out and said something, I don't take it either way. I don't take it as seriously as others are taking it, because I just think, okay, I'll just wait and see in future. If Impossible keeps doing it, then I will not be supporting it anymore. Or at the same time, I don't trust that company that says we will never do it again. I just don't trust people like that because they might do it. And at the same time, they are abusing other animals anyway. So that's why, like, somebody just making a statement on their website is not, I don't take it that seriously.
No one is protesting Magnums, the vegan Magnums. The company, whether they've put out a statement or not, are saying in their actions that they do not reject animal abuse, that they will continue to condone it and sell products and make money off the backs of animals. Because just look at the rest of their range. Same could be said about Cliff Bars. Same could be said about literally every other product that we as vegans consume. These companies that they come from are not vegan companies. So it's just asinine to expect this from Impossible. Like, just because you eat their burger, it doesn't mean you condone them as a company. If that's the case, you're condoning every company you ever purchase anything from, but you're really just condoning that product. You're really just buying a product.
Yeah. And then to people that take that position, and some people do take that position, that by buying the product, you're condoning the company. And it's like you said, I think it's practically impossible to do that. But then they would argue that, okay, but it is practically impossible. But then surely that's the same as saying it's practically impossible to be vegan, but we're just doing the best we can, and we're going to make extra efforts to not buy from companies that we know are really bad. Like, what do you think to that?
That would be an incorrect statement, because that would suggest a different definition of veganism. Veganism is literally defined by avoiding animal abuse as much as practically possible. It's not practical to carry out veganism in the way that it's being suggested in all this stuff. It's just, that's not practical. We're not even talking about a scenario where you have two options in front of you, one from a vegan company and one is an Impossible Burger, and you have no other food options because you're on a desert, you're on a deserted island or something. That's not the scenario we're in here. Because in that scenario, obviously the better thing to do would be to choose the product from the vegan company. But it's not as black and white as this.
Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. All right, we'll close that chapter. We've got just 2 more topics left, and then we'll go to a Q&A. So I don't know how many people are left from the beginning, but there were a lot of questions coming in earlier, and I'm not prepared to go through the chat to find them. So if you have questions, you're going to have to save them and type them again when we do a quick Q&A. And as I said, if you're planning on asking questions, keep it sensible, or we just won't answer it. It's a waste of your time typing it if you're going to be stupid. So just keep that in mind. All right, the last 2 points then. Just the first one, I want to talk about this. It's linked to something we discussed earlier, actually, about the people complaining or claiming they weren't getting funded, like they weren't getting the AV fund or whatever. And it links into an overall problem of organizers in AV getting somehow feeling that they haven't been supported, or they feel like they haven't been supported by you, or they feel like they've been actually had the opposite. Like some ex-organizers go out there and claim that they were actually I don't know what you would say, rude, that you guys were rude to them, or they were treated badly by AV, and that's why they left, or they were booted out, or something. And I'm being generic here in general, because every time I've pushed for more information on these claims, I've had nothing, right? So I'm bringing it up as a general topic, and you don't need to answer it as if it's like, oh, this one individual or something, because they never provided me any screenshots or anything, so I've got nothing to show you. But why are they doing this? Why do you think this is coming up from ex-organizers, where they're saying I wasn't supported or I was treated badly? Where is that coming from? Do you think there's any truth to it? What are your thoughts on it?
No, there's no truth to this, because we provide support for every chapter, for every organizer equally. Right, we've got all these different things and procedures and systems in place that provide support from us to the regional organizers. We have a manager that manages the regional organizers, and then so all of the organizers have the ability to reach out to us personally in their chat at any moment if they need support, if they need advice, if they need any kind of help. And we always help them, and we provide support where we can. So to just leave and say that they felt like they were not supported or they were treated badly is just yeah, like, we need to see the evidence, because it's easy to just make these statements, but where is it coming from? Again, it's just because people think, okay, I'm going to leave AV because all these people said Paul is racist and this and that, and so now I'm going to just jump on the bandwagon and say AV treated me badly. That's the only thing I can think of. There's no evidence, right?
I don't think it's much of a help to anybody for us to comment on this any further than that, because there's no specific thing that we're responding to.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get it, you know, I agree with you. I don't like bringing this up because I've got nothing to show, you know what I mean? And I feel like I've had multiple conversations. I'll be honest with you, I've had conversations with people that I would consider to be good friends, and I've had to be quite harsh and say, look, either give me something here or you're full of shit. Like, I'm sorry. And we've kind of like got into an argument and just agreed to disagree on it because they wouldn't give it to me because they didn't have it. And so I've got to say, I hold a bit of a bias on this because I've experienced the bullshit firsthand, and it's really disappointing to see. And it happens to me as well. Obviously, people say things about me, and I'll say, okay, great, give me some evidence, tell me where I've said that, and they disappear. You know, so it's a symptom of a larger problem, I think.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. And then the final thing we'll go into then is actually about the effectiveness of AV. So this is a good thing, or not just AV, but of animal rights activism, of the activism that we're doing. So somebody did message me and they told me, ask them, they started off with a shitty message. They said, ask them why the cube of truth doesn't work. So I was like, okay, what are you talking about? And they said, right, look, the number of animals being killed is on the rise, and the Challenge 22 signups for last year, I think it was last year, was only 2,000 in the entire world. So clearly it's not working. So I broke that down into two sections, and this is two things I want to go through. Like, one side of this is that obviously if the number of animals being killed is increasing, it's not just AV that's not working, it's every single activism group that's not working, because clearly, you know, SAVE isn't working, DXE isn't working, Direct Action isn't working, Hunt Tabs aren't working, nothing's working because the amount of animals being killed is on the increase, right? So that's a topic. Why is that happening? You know, what can we do about it as one topic? And the other topic is why the Challenge, the Vegan 22 AV signups, they seem to be a lot lower than what would be expected of you know, considering how much work goes into the cubes, right? So I think let's maybe start with the Challenge 22 one, because that might be an easier, quicker one to go into, and then we'll close on the other one. So with the Challenge 22 reporting, firstly, is that accurate? Like, what's going on with that? How is it only at 2,000 for like the whole year?
No, first of all, it's not accurate because many people wouldn't use it. Also, at some point, we stopped promoting it and using it anyway, because we realized that Challenge 22 is not really aligned with AV in terms of how they promote veganism. And so we stopped promoting it. And maybe some organizers, some volunteers are still using that link when they Irish someone at a cube, but it's not being done the same way anyway. I think, when did we start doing this? When did we stop using the link? Last year?
At least a year and a half.
Yeah,
it could even be up to 2 years now, but it's at least a year and a half.
Yeah, I think it was last year. At some point, we realized that we're just not aligned. We stopped using it. And even when we were promoting it and it was on the card, I can Irish someone and I can say, you know, you can go and sign up and use this link. But that person is not necessarily going to do it, even if they do decide that they want to be vegan. So that's why it's not a good measurement.
And the way that we communicate animal rights to people is so simple and easy to digest, and with so much personal, individual accountability attached to it, that the why factor is something we focus so heavily on hammering into people, that the how factor is something we empower. Generally, we empower the bystander to take on within their accountability. It's their responsibility to you know, properly plan how they're going to be vegan by simply using Google. And we sometimes say exactly that. You know, Google is all you really need to be vegan. We want it to be simple for people. We don't want to make it sound like you need to be in a 22-day program when that's not even true. You don't. The fact is, you do not need that. Is it helpful for some people, but not for everyone? And that's not the message that we believe is important. We need to clarify it further by saying all that's needed is the why factor, the how you will figure out. If there were vegans 50 years ago, you can be vegan now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. I think that's, I'll give you my personal opinion on that as well, because I think that's fair. And I think, I don't know, to gauge the success or failure by how many Challenge 22 signups seems a bit short-sighted, considering that, you know, you see conversations with someone like, you know, Hudson, for example, who's a great activist, and some of his conversations just you blow someone's mind, you know. And do they sign up for Vegan 22? Maybe not, but their mind has been blown. Like, you know, you can't undo that. Like, maybe they don't do Vegan 22, but the idea that they could potentially go vegan is still there. You know, they've definitely made some connections. So I think gauging the success based on that is a little bit, no, not a little bit, it's very short-sighted. It does bring up the question, though, of how can we gauge success, right? Because currently this leads on to the next question, that we can gauge our failure by the amount of animals being killed on the rise, right? So that's something I feel that we all have to take as a bit of a slap in the face. Like, okay, we're trying, but, you know, clearly something isn't working as effectively as we'd like it to be, or we've got a long way to go, right? So how can we gauge success? How can we know that we're working towards, you know, the right place when it looks like we're not, if you look at the global statistic?
Hey, look, I would agree that animals and the animal rights movement has been pushed back even further this year than it was last year. I would agree with that. All right?
Yeah.
But to say that we shouldn't fight for animals in the way that we're doing it is ridiculous. I would judge incremental wins by saying that, you know, in our network, I'm seeing more and more people than ever before speaking correctly about this, and that's beautiful. Okay, we're ending human supremacy, we're holding people accountable, and we're spreading a clear vegan message on behalf of the animals. So for me, that's one win that I would use as an indicator for us moving in the right direction. And I think more and more vegans are taking on board this need to be serious about how we're being perceived by others, and like taking that seriously and wanting to be taken seriously when it comes to this. I don't even think that many others are really even taking that into account. But I think more and more people are actually onboarding this attitude, which I think is another great indicator. I think there are other great indicators we could point at, but I guess it depends on the way you see it, and I guess also whether you're an optimist or you're a pessimist, and we don't think that you should just do one thing anyway. Like, people should do what they think is effective, and they should be as effective as they can possibly be doing it. And we need people fighting in politics. We need people fighting in government. We need people fighting in corporate. We need people fighting on the streets. We need people fighting in Hollywood. It doesn't stop. This fight is multifaceted, and it needs to continue at every level.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also something that's not being considered is that although some countries, there may be reductions in how much animal products are being produced, right, or how many people are consuming them or using them, whereas other countries are on the rise. Like, for example, unfortunately, India is one of those countries where I know we have a few Indians here in the chat who can also, you know, vouch for this, that the amount of animal products, specifically meat, being consumed in India is actually increasing. And there are other countries, especially in the East, who are having the same situation. Previously, they had very low consumption, and now because of the Western influence, they are consuming more, whereas it seems like some Western countries are on the flip side of that, they're consuming less. So this is, you know, without the hard data to really show and really dive into everything that's happening, we can't just make a general statement that we're losing. You know, we need to actually look at which countries are having an impact and which aren't, and why, and dig deep into each situation, right?
Yeah.
And I agree with everything you said also about, you know, getting the message right. And it's reassuring to know that the more people are starting to be more unapologetic, I think the word would be, about defending the animals.
Yeah, and I also want to say that we don't have definitive numbers either way on this, on the amount of animals being oppressed. So I am skeptical of whatever data people are using to make these assumptions or to make these declarations about where things are in terms of the numbers. So I question that, because I remember when Bite Size Vegan did a video, and she was trying to, in that video, give people the kill count. And even she concluded in that video, there's no way to determine this. I'm only making an educated guess here. Okay, so even after hours and hours of research being put into that video, that was her conclusion. But how are these individuals coming to this conclusion when where is this data even being logged? All those marine animals that are slaughtered in the fish industry, are they being logged? Like, who's noting how many animals are being murdered? Like, it's all an assumption, and I wouldn't trust any piece of information coming from animal agriculture, of course, or any study that's funded by animal agriculture, of course, if it says something to the effect that their products are on the rise and they're doing really well and all this. I wouldn't trust that. And especially since we know actually that the dairy industry is on its way out. There's many indicators of that. So it depends on what you're looking at, and I need more data and more evidence to even entertain the notion that that it's going in the opposite direction in terms of the numbers. However, in terms of public perception and the way that animal rights is perceived publicly now, animal rights has been pushed even further back than it was last year. I do agree with that. Yeah.
No, I agree. All right, that brings us to the end of my topics. And now, I guess it's late for you guys actually, but if you do have another, like, let's limit it to maybe, like, I don't know, would you agree for another 20 minutes? Is that okay, or 30 minutes? Or is that too much for you guys right now?
20 minutes sounds good.
All right, I can see. Yeah, I'm waking up and you're going to bed, so this is kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, I know.
How late is it? Sorry, what time?
10:40.
All right. Okay. Cool. Yeah, we can start to wrap up then. So, guys, you got to put some questions in. I didn't see you putting any questions in so far. I'm not going to go back through all the way back to the beginning because I know some of you aren't even here anymore. So if you've got questions, now's the time. And if you really, really want your question to be asked like right now, and you want it to make sure you fit it in 20 minutes, in the next 20 minutes, then you can do a super chat, and that will 100% be asked, as long as it's not something shitty, to put it bluntly. But yeah, we're open to questions now for the next like 20 minutes or so. But after that, I'm going to let them go to bed. So
I'm going to run to the toilet.
Sure, man. Cool. No worries. And whilst I'm waiting for that, yeah, I just want to say I do really appreciate you both coming on here. I know it's mentally exhausting to go through these things, especially considering that some of them are really ugly accusations, right? One of the main reasons I wanted to do it as well is because I feel like I can empathize with this, because I've also been on the receiving end of equally ugly accusations. So I know how it feels when you read that. Like we all pretend like, yeah, well, whatever, whatever. But like, really, it does get you, right? When you read something so horrible and someone's saying it about you, I know how it feels. So I'm happy we could get through this, and I hope a few people have had. I hope it's given a few people something to think about, at least, so they don't go and repeat this nonsense over and over again, because it doesn't feel good to read it, does it?
Yeah, I just hope that what people can take from this maybe is that they start thinking a bit more critically, and if they hear something, they ask for evidence, they ask for proof, they look into it before deciding that somebody is a racist, sexist, etc. Because these are horrible things that you can say. And yeah, it's sad that people can just use this term so loosely now, and they don't realize how insulting and destructive that is, and how much it actually takes away from the real victims of these oppressions. So yeah.
No, for sure. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. It doesn't look like there's any questions coming in. I guess we've kind of answered so much. I guess they don't have anything else that's not being answered, to be honest. I thought about this earlier in that we've gone through so many topics that maybe there aren't going to be questions, because there's like 60 people watching right now, and so far there's no questions. So if that's the case, we can wrap up. There's a lot of statements though. I can put some of those on the screen. Just like for the last maybe like 10 minutes or so, just Being King saying here, they don't have evidence for their claims, and when they do, it's hilarious. I mean, this is how it seems to be, right? Like there's no evidence, or there is evidence, but it's not evidence. Like it's something they have made I don't know, they've made it some kind of assumption from, or they've twisted, right?
Yeah.
This seems to be happening most of the time, really.
Yeah.
That's me as well. That's kind of, I face that personally. We do have a question though now. From I'm not even going to try and pronounce your name. I'm sorry. I should though, shouldn't I? It's disrespectful. Mester Jackal, let's say. Do you think donating money to animal sanctuaries is worth the money? Oftentimes, the same people who say outreach doesn't work advocate for donating to sanctuaries or fundraise themselves.
Well, of course, it's worth the money. I think we need people to donate to animal sanctuaries and also donate to organizations like AV so that we can keep doing what we're doing. I think it's all needed. So once we have these animals who are being rescued, obviously they're going to need a home. So that's where the animal sanctuaries come in, and they can't just operate without the money. So yeah, I think that's obvious that it's worth the money.
Yeah, I think maybe they're also alluding to the idea that a lot of these same individuals will say, don't donate to Ed or James or AV or whatever, donate to a sanctuary because it's better. And it kind of give the impression that it's one or the other, that there's people that's it. You can only choose one, and, one should get all the money, which is nonsense, obviously.
Yeah.
All right. This is from Michael. Paul and Asal, you're still young. Do you think we will be living in a majority vegan world in your lifetime?
I want to say yes so badly. I just really don't know. It doesn't feel like in the next 50 years or so we're going to achieve that. To be realistic, I just don't think.
Sure. I think from my side of this, I think I agree, but I also see it as positive that I feel like we lay the foundations for the future generations that will achieve this. So it's, although we won't see it, be realistic, we're not going to see it, but we can do a lot of good work to help the future people to see it.
For sure.
So,
yeah, it's like Tupac said, we may not be the ones to see that, but we will be the ones to spark the minds of those who will create that world. And if we don't create it ourselves, but I think it's more important to just be focused on spending our lifetime on fighting for a vegan world rather than being attached to it coming to fruition in our lifetime. Not that this question suggests that, it's just wondering whether we think it will happen or not. I guess I just stopped thinking about it and caring, I guess. I'm focused on what I can do day to day. And in our lifetime, that's all that we can focus on.
Cool. Agreed. A super question. So this is a super chat, by the way. If anyone was wondering what that looks like, it looks like this. So you can put a price on it, and it means that you'll pay for it. It means you'll get your question answered. So any updates on future campaigns for next year once COVID is gone?
We're going to get back to our world tour that we were doing. I just started that tour, did 2 cities, ended it as a result of COVID. So that tour will continue, and then we will, pardon me, we will do 2 weeks of truth, which we're really looking forward to doing. We're going to do 1 damn week, and we're going to do, what was the other one? We're going to do the AV Academy. It's going to be a boot camp. And yeah, that's it.
Cool.
Yeah, we will do those things once this whole thing's over.
Awesome. Cool. I've got another question here, but I'll just give you a heads up. It's a it's another kind of accusational question. All right, so just gotta give you a heads up on it. It's one that I forgot to cover with you actually. Well, I didn't have time to cover it with you, but I think I was going to cover it. But I guess we can cover it now. It's about the rumor that about the whole creation of AV. This rumor has been around for a long time, as far as I know. I think I've seen you deal with it once before on another live or something. But yeah, if you could respond to this, is it true that another activist from Melbourne created the idea? Sorry?
This is actually new. I've never heard this one.
Oh, okay. Okay.
They asked Paul to be a volunteer for them.
Yeah.
One, have you?
Well,
there's a second half of it, by the way, and this is this as well. This is the second half of that question. So there you go.
What? That's
Wow.
yeah. This is a completely new thing I've never heard of.
What a wild imagination.
Yeah, it's interesting because
No, I've never heard this one before.
I'm wondering where this has come from, and I'm wondering.
Mind.
Yeah, I don't. What's the correct political? What's the political correct term for Chinese whispers these days?
Oh God, I don't even know. I would just say that, but yeah, you're right. I think people would get upset about that. Actually, no, I don't know.
Okay, well, that's what this is. I'm trying to use the correct term, but trying not to crucify me, guys. Yeah, so I don't really know. I don't really know what this is, but we know about the original accusation that came from individuals, plural, in Melbourne, and that's all documented. Actually, it came out with the whole "Liberation is Inclusive, Truth of Cube" video that was made about us. They jumped on that bandwagon and contributed to the document that was linked in the caption of that video. Wherever it's shared, you'll see the link, and wherever you see that link, you'll see the document, and in that document, you'll see these individuals who came out initially and made this accusation that they created AV with us and that we stole it from them. Now, this story that we're being asked of here is claiming that it was
we
were volunteering.
No, I didn't even exist. You were a volunteer.
Right. Yeah. So
I didn't exist.
This is a new thing.
Situation.
I don't know about this at all. I haven't heard this accusation before.
Okay. According to this person, just to close this off, they're saying this is a direct claim from the person who claims to have had this conversation with you. So it seems like it's I don't know, if you don't know this, and it's it seems made up, I guess. Yeah.
It's like when someone becomes famous, many people start coming out and claiming that that person is their cousin.
Right.
And that's what this is. It's kind of like the same thing here. People are claiming that they created AV, but there's no basis for any of this. I've heard a couple of different people trying to claim this over the years, but these people aren't doing much.
Yeah.
So that's what they claim to activism is. But I feel for these people if they really want to try to steal that from us. All the hard work we've put in and all the commitment we've given to this organization, if they want to try to steal that from us, it says something about what they're suffering from internally. Like, I'm sorry that they feel that they need to take from us in that scenario, because it means that they must be hurting somewhere else and not feeling adequate for themselves. And I really mean it, that I feel bad for these people.
Fair enough. Funny question, like kind of funny. Are you friends with Joey Carbstrong again?
Nope.
No.
Yeah, I thought that might be the case. I genuinely, I didn't say this in my video actually, but when I made the video about this, but on a personal note, you don't have to respond to this, but I do hold some hope that can be fixed between you guys, that you can come to some kind of, I don't know, I hope that you can be friends again, because it was, you had a good thing going. You were supporting each other. It was good. It's a shame to see it all go to shit, but he did what he did, and what happened.
Yeah, look, I forgive him for making a stupid mistake. He's human. Humans make stupid mistakes. But for as long as he won't acknowledge his mistake, there's no room for, I can't be friends with people who lack accountability. It's just not a part of my quality that I hold myself to and what I expect from friends.
Yeah, that's understandable. It's understandable, but I can't, yeah, as most people, I can't help hoping that it can be worked out. But it's kind of in his court, isn't it? The ball's in his court on this. Someone's asking a question that it's an obvious question, but I'm going to put it up anyway because you can easily just answer it. It's on the transgender topic again. They're saying, you said everyone should be respected. We all agreed everyone should be respected. Does this mean that if someone hates transgender people, should they be respected?
This is what I mean. This is what I mean about nuance. Like, if Hitler shows up to the cube, should he be respected? Like, if he just is resurrected from the earth, comes back to life and shows up at the cube, will he be respected? Do I have to answer that?
When we said everyone should be respected, we meant the person who chooses a different pronoun or name, as well as the person who might disagree with that ideology.
Oppression.
That's what we meant. We didn't say the bully or the oppressor.
So oppression is not respected.
Yeah.
I thought that like, because we led into that point with saying that, actually. And so, yeah.
No, totally. I understand. I think I watched this thing with Bill Barr, you know, the comedian Bill Barr. He was talking about nuance as well. Do you know the ginger guy speaks really quickly? I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, cool. So he talked about nuance as well, and he was saying that like everything I say is twisted. And he said something like he was talking about consent, right? And I'm gonna. By the way, for anyone that's looking for something to get me on here, this is Bill Barr's words, not my words. All right, don't fucking start here. But basically, he said, like, today's world, like, how do you even work, right? So he said, like, it's all about consent, and you're at risk all the way, always. And he said, how do you have it rough now? Like, if a girl wants it rough, how do you do that? Because, you know, how does it work, right? And this guy in the crowd shouted, you need to get consent first. And he was like, this is why you can't make jokes anymore. He was like, this fucking moron thinks that I'm saying that I was not going to get consent. I never said that. He was like, when did I say that? Why would you assume that that's what I meant, right? And he was like, it's fucking ridiculous. You assume the worst of me. And he called this guy an idiot and a moron and like really slammed him for shouting that. Because it's like, I'm not a monster, dude. Like, I'm making a joke about rough sex. I'm not making a joke about not getting consent. Are you insane? There's a very big difference. And I'm saying it because he commented on it. And it's kind of what's just happened here. It's like, you guys said respect everyone. And someone understood that as respect transphobic people. It's like, no, that's not what was said. No one said that. Jesus, do you think I would have let that fly in the conversation? Do you really think I am that morally corrupt that I would just let someone say that on my channel and just not question, wait a minute, you've just said you want to respect transphobes? It's like, no, I would never let that go. Even if I had someone like some monster on the channel, I wouldn't let that go. But that's not the case, you know? Anyway, I've just gone off the handle a bit there, but we're at the end anyway. It's fine. It's
just as silly as having to say, oh, with the exception of intersex, when you're saying there's two sexes. Like, why should we even have to say that? It's an anomaly. Of course, that's an exception to the rule. And like, you know, you don't need to say certain things, I guess, if you are reading between the lines and you are attuned to nuance, and you don't just see things through this cancel culture lens where, you know, what Bill Burr said is, these days you say something and what you say goes into someone's brain and then it gets cut with all of the things that they're conditioned with. And, you know, and then it comes out of their brain, they spit it out after that, you know, according to what they perceive it to be. And it's usually completely different to what you said. And it's the same thing here.
That's something that shouldn't, in my opinion, shouldn't need to be clarified. You should assume the best in people, not the worst. I don't understand what you have done, or even what I have done, because I'm involved in this. That question was for all of us, right? Because they're assuming that you have said that and I have I have been like, yeah, great, cool. Like,
Yeah.
what did I do to deserve that? What did you do to deserve that assumption? Like, I don't think any of us has done anything particularly, you know, that horrible to think that any of us would like believe that or let it go. It's such a strange, and I think the person's saying it innocently enough. I don't think they're trying to attack, but at the same time, it's like, dude, be reasonable here. Come on.
It's a fair enough question, but I mean, I don't know. Is it fair enough? Actually, am I trying to be nice?
I don't think it's fair enough at all, in my opinion. I think it's something that if you've watched the whole conversation and listened without assuming the worst in all three of us, you would come to the conclusion that that's not what was being said. Like, that you're not going to respect a bigot. You're not going to respect someone who hates trans people. Like, what the fuck? Like, what kind of rational person would ever have irrational hatred or acceptance of irrational hatred? Like, it's not rational to accept that. And I don't believe we've been acting irrationally in this conversation. So I guess what I'm trying to say is like, assume good intentions, stop assuming bad intentions of people, whoever you're talking to, really. Like, give them a chance to prove themselves to be, you know, good. Don't look for bad, look for good, and assume they want the best. I think is really important. We'll have one more question and then we'll close off. It's a nice question, I think. Do the where's the money go people have any idea how much unpaid work that you guys have put into animal rights, do you think?
Thank you, Jenna Lee. That's a refreshing perspective to hear, and not just for our case. And it's not just refreshing for us to hear for, you know, when I think about us and the criticisms that we get. It's also refreshing to hear for any other activist, on behalf of any other activist that gets similar criticisms like this. You know, I don't think that animal rights activists are getting the opportunity given to them or the respect given to them that they deserve in terms of acquiring financial security whilst being an animal rights activist full time. If there's any question about motives, then you just have to look at, you know, like this person has graciously pointed out, and I think it's refreshing because it's the kind of perspective that really people should have, is looking more deeply at the work that people do, and that doesn't lie. And if it is a question about motives, then yeah, look at all the work we've done when we had no money towards any of this, and we put all of our own personal money towards everything. And when we went broke putting all of our money into AV from the beginning, and we will continue to do that to the very end, for the simple fact that it's about the mission. It's about what the organization is intended for, and we'll, you know, that's the thing. I don't know what else to say about this, I guess. So do you want to add to that? Yeah, I just want animal rights activists to feel that it's a very viable option for them to come into animal rights as an activist, to be an activist full-time, part-time, and to have financial security, and not to expect that they're going to be walking on hot coal just because they do want financial security while being while being an animal rights activist. I know that we probably entertain on this stream. We probably entertain the accusations maybe too much. I don't know. I'll watch this back and I'll judge later. But that's why I think it's important to just note that, you know, we need to hold a certain precedent and set a certain tone for animal rights activists in this movement who may be wanting to come into this movement. Maybe they want to come into this movement and become an activist, or maybe you're already an activist. And, you know, I want them to understand that there's nothing wrong with fighting for the animals whilst also acquiring financial security, as long as your motive is not financial to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll wrap it up there. I'll just say that I hope that you said we gave too much attention to some of these topics, and I would be, you know, likely to agree, but Tempted to agree, but I think what I was trying to achieve here is to have this be, in my opinion, like the last time I'm going to talk about any of this anyway, and I hope the last time you also talk about it, because this is going to go up on my channel now, and it's going to have sectors marked for every single topic, so that anytime anything does come up about this, and you know, someone's asking you, hey, what do I say to this, you can literally say to them, go and find, you know, the topic that they're talking about, copy paste, and if they don't want to watch the video, well, fuck them then. You know, like they want to keep making the accusations, fine, but if they want to know the truth, well, we've answered it, it's right here. That was the goal for this. So you're right, we did give it too much attention, but that's because this was the goal. I don't think most of these accusations deserved even 5 seconds of time, but I do think it's important to have it somewhere so that it's dealt with for good, you know, in my opinion. And that's kind of what I wanted to achieve today, and I hope we've achieved that. Thank you both for coming here and doing this. You didn't have to do it, and I think people overlook that as well. You don't owe anyone anything, and you did not have to sit here and answer these questions. And they weren't nice questions; they were shitty questions. I know what it feels like to be attacked. I know what it feels like to be called these things, and I know how horrible it feels when people ask me more questions about it. So I do understand what you've just been through, and I do understand that this was a shitty thing to do, and I really do appreciate you coming and doing it. And I'm sure there are other people have already been saying in the chat, you can check later, that they also really appreciate you coming and doing this, and they support you. And one person even said they originally didn't support you, but after seeing some of your videos, they were like, okay, no, I actually really hope that they can work this out. So, you know, this is people, I feel like people want to support, and I hope this can bring some of that support back for people who have maybe got lost or confused along the way because of all this shit. So yeah, thank you so much. Is there anything you want to say in closing? Any points you want to add?
Just thank you also, David. Thanks for taking the time, because it's important, I think, as a member of the animal rights movement to want to clarify these things. It's not really about us. Again, it's about the tone. It's about the precedent we set for others in this movement.
Absolutely. Asal, any final words, or
No,
are you good to go?
Just thank you, and thank you to anyone who sent their questions, or, you know, anyone who joined this live and they were commenting and watching this live. So yeah, no, that's it. Thanks for having us, David.
Awesome. And a little bit more housekeeping just before we go. There is another live stream today, and it'll be at 8 p.m. my time, so I don't know what that is your time. This is just completely separate. This is just to discuss all of the different topics that I went through in the 5 Minute Friday. So people watching, if you want to come to that, then do come to that. It'll be the usual style of live stream where we just go through topics and also laugh at some anti-vegan bullshit kind of standard stuff. So come along for that. And don't forget to share this video with anyone who's giving you shit, if they are giving you shit. And also, of course, don't expect that this video will make a difference. Some people don't want to understand. Some people aren't interested in AV anymore, and they're just done. That's totally fine. Don't get upset if it happens. Just you do you, and let them do them, and that's it. You know, don't take it personally.
Yeah,
I would say
it's the same with non-vegans, who many non-vegans aren't reachable, aren't willing, and there's no point in continuing to outreach those individuals either. It's the same thing with vegans.
yeah.
Sure. All right, cool. We'll end it there. Thanks so much. Bye, everyone.
Thank
See
you.
you.